Oh, that's weird.
Good evening and welcome to the January 18th school board meeting for the town of Litchfield. I'd like to begin with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the manifest? Are there any changes to the agenda?
So there are a couple that are noted in red
manifest
for the board, if you're looking at the online version.
Where is the link to find the online version? Because
We got
the
it
one
in
that
the email.
so if I click on the email, that will.
That should take you, so we
Because
now
I
have,
tried to find it with the other ones and
Yeah,
all
I
it
can't
says is
find it in
school
the
board.
folders anymore.
Because it's in the folder, but it just says school board and you can't see the date, so you have to click through every single one.
oh,
Unless you know a shortcut that I don't know.
so
So a couple changes that I have,
fix that.
right?
Should be easier.
Or just points to add in, you can do it under school board comments as well. But we have the audit RFP I'd like to see where we're at with, as well as
Yeah.
I circulated the
gonna add
draft
that under
policy.
old
Hi,
business.
Thanks for your initial review. And also we can have a conversation about that.
Where
So
do
the
we,
audit should go under the old business. I was going to bring that up.
Yep, so we'll add audit update, letter B. I did not hear your other point, Andrew.
I had circulated the draft policy for the special education return of underspend.
Where do you want to put that?
Old business is fine, I guess, just right underneath the audit RFP. It's right before school board comments, either one.
So letter C under old business, policy, special ed
Find the new link.
funding, or funds, I should say. Okay,
anything else? Summary of non-public actions. Approval of non-public meetings, non-public minutes.
I make a motion to approve the non-public minutes.
Wait, haven't they
From
already
which
been
date?
approved?
Yeah,
From
this
the
is- this-
4th.
This is the summary that you have
That's
to
the
read.
summary, like,
got
that's
it.
the actions of what, you just need to
Okay.
read that, what we did.
Presentations and recognitions.
Wait. So summary of non-public actions from January 4th,
Yeah.
right?
Read those.
Mrs. Ames made a
Oh,
motion.
Mrs. Ames made a motion to approve the non-public minutes from December 14th, 2022. Ms. Hirschberger seconded the motion. The motion passed 5-0-0.
Here we go.
Now, presentations and recognition. A report from Dan Mitchell. You're up.
Dan, do you need me to display
We need
the
business
report?
tonight.
I'm
all confused.
First tab,
You
if
got
you want
this.
to share this.
Hello, hang on. Don't know where the cord went, sorry.
I think I have access to the new agenda. Updated.
I'm actually going to go out of order for my report just because I feel like the first bullet is the one we end up talking the most about. But I did want to bring up and make public that we are going to institute a coffee with the principal at GMS. It's something I wanted to do, but you know, with various situations, we're now at the point where I think we can actually open it up. It was originally scheduled for this Friday, but I made the call this afternoon and put it out on social media that just due to the uncertainty of the weather, we're going to move it to next Friday, the 27th. And the original purpose or the intended purpose is really just kind of an open dialogue. So not necessarily a come hear about in a specific, but more just kind of an open conversation. With that said, there may come time where I will, if there is a specific initiative, I'll say that at the coffee principal, we're going to talk about X, Y, or Z. But for the most part, we really just kind of want to have, like I said, a casual dialogue and conversation with parents as well as community, just again to continue to tell the story of what we do at GMS and then to answer questions in that free flow of ideas. Superintendent Jetty has asked us all, so I'm actually up first to just kind of give you a mid-year check on where we are with our school goals. And so if you recall, we do have 3 school goals. The first being PLC, our collaborative teamwork. The second one being with student supports and SEL, and the third being the continuation goal, which is coming up with the skills list. So last year we spent a lot of time building up the infrastructure for the collaborative team process, or PLCs, and this year we've really gone into it right from day one, implementing it. So what we've seen so far is a series of mini loops that are, it's basically student conversations or student decisions based on data. And so at the beginning of the year, a lot of that data is kind of coming in and really whole class, if you will. You know, like we've noticed that as a grade, we're struggling with, you'd say, math facts. And so you'd do what's called a mini loop. So you'd say, all right, we're going to spend 6 weeks and we're really just going to target this skill and we're going to review along the way. As we progress throughout this year, we're now at the point where we're getting mid-year iReady data. So that'll give the class or the teachers an opportunity to set longer loops or longer goals. So this one may last 12 weeks and be larger in scope. And it also provides the opportunity as things get up and running that really what you're going to start seeing is a grade level may have 2 or 3 processes going at a time. And the reason why I say that is because when you have longer ones, there will be time that you may not have anything to discuss, so it's good to have smaller ones in between there. So for instance, if you have a goal about, for instance, writing, well, a writing unit or a target may take 10 weeks, but there's going to be weeks in there where the students are creating the product and there's not much to necessarily discuss, so you can throw in one there about math facts or a specific reading skill that you can mix in there, and then you just kind of follow the process. All the grade levels are familiar with the manual now, and they're just kind of following it through. So this process is going. And then Maura and I check in at minimum once a month, and then upon invitation to make sure that kind of everything is going along with the grade levels. But I've been pleased with all the work we did last year, and now actually kind of seeing it come to fruition. The second one is the goal of the SEL work, which is really kind of spearheaded with Maura and Jen and the Student Support Committee. We're happy that at least this year we've had 2 in-person assemblies to bring back, and all of the monthly assemblies are always focused on our pause. And so every month we focus on a specific area or skill. So for instance, last month we gave out the recognition and we focused on pause and action at recess. And so this month we'll recognize pause and action in the classroom. And then in addition, Jen uses Google Classroom to push out materials, because really the end goal of this is not for SEL to be specifically assigned to school counseling, but rather have school counseling and that committee work to empower all of the staff to kind of address it in their own way, in their own specific way. So at the end of the year, if we've achieved that goal, everyone feels, as you've heard the term, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, that we almost have that, maybe not that formal, but we know what an SEL approach, what could be done at the grade level or with a specific staff when it goes up to school counseling, when it goes into the CAP process, to kind of formalize that. And then the final one is the skills work. And so last year, if you remember when we did the skills, we asked every skill that you wanted. We ended up with a list of 172. This year, we've taken a different approach, which was at every grade level, we've been using the staff meetings to work on this work, and we said, every grade level, we'd like you to come up with 5 skills that you hope students have before they come to you, and then 5 skills that you can attest that they will have when they leave you. And so what we did is we then were able to create this list to then now do a crosswalk to put them side by side to say, first grade says they're going to have these, second grade, do you expect them, and to make sure that we have alignment. And so we're now at the point where, and I included the questions at last month's staff meeting, now that we have the list, we're looking at those questions, which I'll read just so the public kind of hear, which is, how are we currently doing with these expected skills? Are you achieving these goals? Are students coming to you with these skills? Basically, we need to make sure that the target that we're setting is one that's kind of already in place. So you can't say that we're going to attain these if you can't say that we are currently attaining these. You can't say that we're going to do these, or and then you can't say that you expect them without kind of letting the grades below you know that these are the expectations. So we're kind of doing the work in grade levels, but also having that vertical approach too. And then also we've asked them to make the argument that these are necessary skills. Why are they necessary? Why are these the 5 most important ones? You say they're the most important ones, and the general statement that I make is, give me the argument that you want me to make on your behalf. Because I'll be the one sitting here at this table making the public argument. So if you can make the argument for me, then I can make the argument for you. So we're into that little deeper conversations on that. So I've been pleased with how those goals have been going, and I feel that we are on pace that we set in the summer. And then the final thing I want to talk to you about today was a conversation that came up at one of the last school board meetings. And so I figured...
Just before you leave that, so I displayed, it's later in the agenda under new business, but there's what Dan was talking about, the mid-year goals. So he jumped a little bit on us, but I just wanted you to know it's there, and I'll come back to it because I have to do the district.
Okay.
So, no, you're good.
Yeah. And everything I put in there is literally just cut and paste. Like, obviously, you won't see anything different. At one of the last board meetings, it was brought up about the GMS playground and the winter. And so... In the spring.
Sorry.
So, last week, Doug, myself, Maura, and Dave were able to meet with representatives of Primex and do a walk of the playground so that they could kind of yet again tell us what the situation is. And so one thing that I want to kind of state is that some of this is an issue of messaging, and that's on me. I take responsibility. We tend to use the term "the playground is closed." That is actually not the case. There are aspects of the playground that are closed, and that is a decision that's actually not made by us. It's made by, and I'm sure you are all familiar with the concepts of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission Public Playground Safety Handbook. But in it, it really points to, as you recall through your reading on page 10, that basically anything that is considered a high fall potential, anything that's a high fall potential.
Like what? I didn't read that page.
A high fall potential. So at the GMS playground,
Like
the
the monkey
high
bars.
fall
Like
potential
not
is
swings and
basically
stuff
our swings and our structure. So anything that is a high fall potential requires 9 inches of soft landing. So Dave, as Dave did, came out with the walkthrough with a hammer so he could demonstrate, and we had approximately 1.5 inches of soft landing. So
Yeah, so he dug back with the hammer, and then he started pounding on it, and it was solid after 1.5 inches. Not something you would want to hit down on.
no. So I have included pictures just to say, so the playground is not closed. The structure is off limits. The swings are off limits. But even the area around the structure and around the swings are still free for the students to run and play. We have also made investments through the PTO, and this is where we've kind of gotten a little caught. We made investments to improve recess and winter. The PTO made a generous donation, and we used that to buy a number of sleds and other things that require snow. We haven't gotten snow.
Right.
So is the ground frozen now? I'm just curious.
The ground is frozen. So he hit the hammer, and it went dunk. Like there was nothing stuff. There was maybe like the top layer, which is like the layer of mulch, and it was hard. Now
So that was one of the suggestions too from Primex. Is there any way you can make recess more fun, you know, if they're not allowed on the structure? And Dan said, well, you know, we've actually purchased several different things. So what they recommend has already happened, which I think is a positive.
And we're continuing to. So I had a conversation that day with some of the staff in kindergarten, and they said it would be great if we had some other kindergarten things. And I said, send me the Amazon links, and we'll have them in 3 days. So they're working on that, and perhaps making, as they asked, maybe we can make like a kindergarten-specific cart. I said, sure, you know, whatever it takes. But we also acknowledge, and we acknowledge this with Primex, and part of the issue that we have is our property. And with that high water table, we have a very slow thaw. On top of that, the mulch itself is an insulator. And so basically what you end up is that you end up with that hard freeze that stays. And I've said, this week, I think people understand. The hardest part is when it's 73 degrees on the third week of April, and I have to say, sorry, the ground is still frozen. Because to get 9 inches of thaw takes a lot. But I will also say, Dave and his crew, and I will push them too, scrape every single day and find that one area that's 9 inches, and then we bring in the new mulch. It is
Need more mulch? Like.
every year we bring in, once they can fluff it, and then they add another layer on top of it. I don't want to speak for him and say that once he gets 7, we buy 2, but I know that every year, once he gets it soft enough, he didn't use the word till, because till can actually break it down. But I think he used fluff or turn. Fluff or turn,
Yep.
and then they purchase more mulch to throw on top of that. So I wanted to at least recognize that there was an error in messaging in saying that the playground was closed. It's not. And so that day, I threw out some pictures that hopefully people can see. They are out, and they are utilizing the entire property. They're just not allowed to utilize the swings and the structure, which are considered those high fall potential areas.
But they can use the Gaga pit.
They can use the Gaga pit.
tunnels.
They can use the tunnels. They can use everything. Oh, this is a video.
Yes,
See, I
your
can-
video is very helpful. Happy kids.
That sounds about right.
Yep, there it is.
I hated the fact that people thought that when I said that we put every class and they're just standing on the blacktop staring at each other. And that it just wasn't, as you can see, not many kids wrong about that.
Well, I'm glad you talked to some of your teachers to see, like, the littles, like pre-K and stuff, that maybe they needed a few extra things.
Yeah. So anything, if they want, we'll find the money to purchase. That's short money to improve that experience.
When we walked around, I think it was first grade recess, and the kids were spread out. There were some kids on the blacktop. The kids were moving, the kids were having fun, which was good to see. So they're creative, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, this is really the same story.
Yeah,
It's no different than a few years ago.
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Right.
The question always comes back to, well, why is Litchfield different, and why can't we be like other neighboring towns that have their play structure and swing sets open in the winter?
Because we were.
I honestly, I think
We
it
were
comes
sued.
down to
The water table.
we were unlucky enough that we've actually had an incident. And because of that incident, we've basically received official notification. And once you have official notification, there is no liability shield. And that's not just for the school, that's actually also for the people involved too. And while I love,
So that's our answer.
Yeah,
When we
well-
talk about the playground and talk about it,
Right.
parts of it being off limits, right? The answer is that.
We're
yeah,
on the watch list.
It's not because we're just closing it for the heck of it.
yeah. Now, I will say, the Primex even said,
How many
if-
years are you on that list? Do you know?
I don't know that it's a
no,
set.
it's not a list,
It's not a set
well, it's
list.
once you've been notified, you no longer have plausible
Change
deniability.
insurance.
Yeah, you no longer have plausible,
Yeah, but that should go away after a certain period of time.
No,
No, it's
because
because we're
legal
trained. It's
notice.
because we're actually doing it the right way. So we have the high water table, which is always going to keep us out there longer. But even without the high
Well,
water
that
table,
may have precipitated it, Andrew, but it's not the reason. It's the water table now that's the
well,
reason.
it's partly the water table. But even without the water table, kids on other towns get to use their playground much more often than kids in Litchfield. That's because there was the lawsuit, so there have been training of people and there's knowledge of people. So therefore, if a lawsuit did happen again, they would discover very quickly that people were trained, people were knowledgeable about it, and therefore they're even more negligent, which means that the cost of the lawsuit would rise most likely, and the award of the lawsuit would rise as well, most likely.
and so
not
then
only-
all we could do was we could shift negligence, if that made sense.
Yeah.
If I ordered one of my staff to do it, they're off the hook, I'm on the hook. If you create a policy that says it opens on April 1st,
We're on.
I'm off the hook, you're on the hook. You know, like, it never gets away from the fact that these are the standards for proper usage, and we
Was
have
it
to
an
follow them.
insurance claim or was it a lawsuit? I thought it was an insurance claim. I didn't realize a lawsuit.
There was a lawsuit, because I can tell you that the attorneys or the people who, maybe it was whoever's representing the injured student, showed up at Dave Ross's house. They knocked on his door. They started taking inventory of his personal possessions.
What?
Oh, yeah. Ask him the story. He'll tell you about this. And so now Dave is not, because of that experience, he is not about to do anything that has any responsibility on his, his shoulders, right? So again, you take that kind of an event, and to Doug's point, we're on a heightened level of notice. So we're on a heightened responsibility to figure out how to do this. And, I also wonder too, Andrew, when you say other schools have the playground open, but are they on the swings? Are they on the jungle gym? So
They are.
or are they scaling back on some of that? Who knows for sure, And I think the other thing, I'll be honest, I'm in third grade, and I remember climbing a rope up to a height higher than that ceiling with a mat that thick underneath. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And nobody thought twice about it, right?
It was the 70s.
Right.
Anything goes.
It's a different era now. And so I think part of what we have is, I've done X, Y, and Z, but here's the reality. Litchfield has been put on notice, and so I think we have the
I'm
responsibility.
not even sure changing insurances would help with that, because the point is, if it's a lawsuit,
This
you're
doesn't
gonna
come
have
from-
to disclose it. Doesn't matter
That doesn't change.
Yeah, right.
And despite this conversation, which I think is good, I want the message to be, recess is still a fun and enjoyable and safe experience at GMS, and we are doing our best to provide them as many opportunities. And I know that there are areas we can improve, especially in the areas of adaptability and accessibility.
Yeah.
We have certain barriers and roadblocks that we keep hitting that, but we're thinking of creative ways to make it an inclusive experience for all of our students,
And I
despite
think
the limitations.
you hit the nail on the head. It's about getting creative, right? So we have the luxury of sliding down to Litchfield. Not every school has that, right? So, but the reality is you can do those activities.
You
So,
put it that way.
And come this spring, we'll have cornhole. What are the elementary schools?
there you
cornhole?
go.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
Yeah.
getting creative,
Right.
figuring out what you have and how to utilize it.
I just don't trust
So-
the plows with the cornhole boards right now.
No.
Right. Thank you.
Alrighty?
Dan, thanks for
you.
the pictures, because
Thank
I
you.
love the video. That is not
That's
a,
the best.
Yeah,
that is not a
good.
closed playground.
No, that is not a close
Right.
program.
That sums it up.
Alrighty?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Public comments? At this time, we thank everyone who provided the board with comments. We now have ended public comment. Correspondence.
All right, here we go. There's less than last time, so that's good. January 4th, 2023, and I hopefully wrote 23 on all of these. Some of them I wrote 22 because I just haven't gotten there yet. But Dr. Jetty emailed the board circulating the December 14th, 2022 minutes in a modifiable format so we could make edits. On January 5th, 2023, Mr. Totten emailed the board regarding reconciling North Branch expenses with the municipal lease. There were 3 replies from Mr. Cutter and then 3 additional responses from Mr. Totten on that email string. On January 6th, 2023, Mr. Totten emailed the board regarding a telephone call with legal regarding including expected revenue and expenses to finish the LMS project and inclusion in the operating budget but not the default budget, and then circulating the tax rate estimate sheet. On January 6th, Jan Sullivan emailed the board circulating draft minutes for the January 4th, 2023 non-public, and then she emailed shortly thereafter a second email circulating the public minutes from our January 4th meeting. On January 10th, 2023, Mr. Totten emailed the board regarding final tweaks to the budget and the default budget regarding particularly benefits. On January 10th, 2023, Dr. Jetty responded to Representative Bohm, copying the board outlining the expenses that the district spent from 2003 to 2008 regarding a new elementary school, and requesting that Mr. Bohm advocate for Litchfield taxpayers by supporting more building aid for a new elementary school. On January 10th, 2023, Ms. Widman, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, circulated a workshop series entitled Grading for Learning and Equity. On January 11th, Mr. Totten emailed circulating email correspondence between the Budget Committee Chair and himself, the BA, regarding the valuation used for the tax rate estimate. January 11th, the Superintendent emailed the Board circulating a calendar entry for the January 12th, 2023 special school board meeting that was going to be held regarding reviewing warrant articles and understanding the default calculation. On January 11th, the Superintendent circulated the agenda for that special school board meeting and noted in that email that there was no citizen petition warrant articles that were filed with the school or with the town regarding the school, so that the school warrant articles remain as drafted and proposed by the board. On January 11th, Mr. Totten emailed the board regarding finding an error in one of the spreadsheets, which resulted in a change to one of the numbers. On January 13th, 2023, Dr. Jetty emailed the board circulating the agenda for tonight's meeting with a reply from Mr. Cutter requesting the manifest summary. On January 15th, Mr. Kearns, a community member, emailed the board asking where the school warrants are posted and where the school moderator rules are posted. Dr. Jetty responded, and there was an additional reply from Mr. Kearns on the 17th of January with further questions about the moderator and the process for appointment. January 15th, Mr. Kearns, a community member, emailed with a right-to-know request to moderator Byron requesting all documents. So not very specific, but all documents related to being a moderator. On January 17th, 2023, Mr. Totten emailed the board circulating his business administrator report for tonight. On January 17th, Anna Marati emailed circulating the manifest documentation so we could review that ahead of time with a response from Mr. Cutter. And then today, Mr. Totten emailed the board responding to a question about reconciling North Branch change orders with the invoices. And I think that brings us up to 5 o'clock.
Great job. General business, superintendent's report.
Yep, so a couple of things. I sent a parent communication out last week. You all got it as parents, I'm assuming, but again, just so the public is aware that we communicated the date of the video being shown called Screenagers, and we're hoping that we have a good parent turnout for that event. It's really an important topic. Principal Grantham has sort of led the charge, but I think the other principals are on board with it also, and there will be a discussion forum at the end of that video. So again, parents are encouraged to bring their children to it. I think if you look it up, you can figure out the age appropriateness of it, but Principal Mitchell will tell you we see negative technology influences at Griffin, and so I think having the dialogue with all students at this point makes some sense. I also communicated to the public where we are with budget dates. You know, the attendance at the public hearing was low. You know, it's hard to put a judgment on that.
Weather,
yeah,
I think that was a factor.
A lot of stuff going on, but we certainly want to make sure that our parents are aware of other key budget dates. And remember, there's always a fine line in communicating that we have to communicate facts about what's going on. We cannot be proponents in that forum as to what people ought to do. We can just tell them when it can be done, and then it's their choice to exercise that. And then the last thing is the health screening was updated, and I wanted to make sure everybody was aware. So we added that item 3, and you know, we went back and forth about how to get that in there, but we finally, I think, got the right language, and there it is. The nurses were happy with the way it turned out. Next, I have shared with you the document called Key Dates for Elections. We got this from Gordon last week. I think, I'm not quite sure if it got lost in the transition shuffle, but typically they will send this off to us with all the key dates relative to the lead up to an election. So you'll see that some of the dates on there don't apply to us because, you know, there are specific dates if you're going for a bond and what you're required to do. But I think the key thing is at this point that the filing period for candidates for school offices will open on Wednesday, January 25th. And then it will close on Friday, February 3rd. So that's the 10-day window to file for office. And the other thing is the Budget Committee has until Thursday, January 26th to deliver the final budget back to the school board. So I know that I'm not quite sure where we are with voting on that, but I just wanted to have that date in mind, that it's Thursday the 26th. And then we need to post the warrant and budget for session 1 and session 2 of deliberative by Monday the 30th. And I talked with Doug about that. He's got that date marked, so he's aware of it. And then the other thing is we're busy writing the annual report right now. Barbara wanted them all in on January 15th. I said, well, that's a Sunday of a long weekend, so we'll bump it to the 17th. But you can see the deadline for the annual report is actually Tuesday, March 7th. So she's busy compiling that and getting everything pulled together for that annual report so that we can get that posted a week before the polls.
Which I have to write a preface to the school board, and I did a rough draft, and I want to share it with you all because it's all of our thoughts. I'll send a rough draft, a rough draft. Don't tell Barbara.
I think she already finalized. No, I'm kidding. But yes, it is the school board.
Because it's on
annual
behalf
report.
of you, so I think you all should be included.
Yeah.
So now you have those dates as written out by the attorney. And then the last thing I wanted to do is give where I think we are with the ballot update. So at the top, you'll see that there are actually 4 offices that we need to elect. So in the version that we've been distributing, it had moderator, it had clerk, and it had school board member. It did not have treasurer, but actually all of them are on the same cycle. So we do need to re-elect elect a treasurer this year. So I'll make sure that we communicate out to the people who hold those positions so that they're aware, but there are in fact, we need to elect the moderator, the clerk, and the treasurer for 3-year terms, and then 1 board member for a 3-year term.
Could we talk about just briefly the moderator for this current year? I know that was a community member question, and I think it's just helpful to set the stage for what the expectations are going into deliberative this year.
So, so Mr. Kearns emailed Frank Byron, but Frank resigned as the moderator over a year ago, so he is not the moderator. Last year, the role was filled by Mr. Perry, who was the town moderator, but that was not done the way it should have been done, and so we need to follow the procedure this year to make sure that we have a moderator in place. So currently, there is no school district moderator. And another thing that happened is last year, we should have elected a moderator, but it got left off the ballot. So we are moderator-less at this point, and so at deliberative, we will have to select a moderator, and we'll be looking for somebody to come forward to take that role on at the deliberative. So it's a little bit tricky because if we prepare somebody, because you don't just show up and say, hey, I'll be the moderator today, typically, right? So the moderator prepares, understands what the warrant articles say, understands rules and all the RSAs relative to be a moderator. So somebody with experience should be preparing to do that. And so, and then the first order of business is to select a moderator on that day.
But it's not the board that selects the moderator, it's the townspeople who vote at deliberative
It's
on who that moderator will be.
It's the legislative body attending the meeting who select among themselves who will lead them, if you would, by all the RSAs. So yes, it is not a decision of the governing body, it is a decision of the legislative body.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, in the past, when folks have been applying or putting their name on the ballot to run for any of these positions, they've gone to town hall to do that. It's not town hall this year, correct? Because the clerk is Lauren Crowley, and so it's the SAU?
No, Lauren has submitted a resignation. So even though she was appointed to fill it, Lauren has taken a step back and has resigned from that. So
Oh, that was quick.
this evening, in non-public, I have a nomination for you, and it should clarify the question of where to go. Yep.
Okay.
Did we already pay the stipend?
No,
Okay. Well,
we,
We're not that
Okay.
fast.
You would have seen it coming up in a manifest.
all right.
yeah. So you have that, and then the last thing is, unless a meeting has occurred, I emailed JD and Kate about everything in green, and I said, my understanding is that the Budget Committee will re-vote on Article 1 because of the changes in numbers, so that will have to be updated. Article 2, the school board added that last clause, and we're waiting for the budget committee to re-vote on it with that clause included. And then I asked them the word additional, which was in the warrant, but it was not in the slides that Kate showed the other night. And so I just don't know when the budget committee voted on it, if they voted on it with the word additional in there. But I will tell you, I think part of the concern from Mr. Kearns, he hasn't addressed this directly, but I know that his concern is about the estimated tax impact statement, because it says 0, and our attorney has advised us that adding the word additional helps to clarify that because there is no additional, because the money is already in hand, has already been raised, that's why there is no estimated tax impact, because it's already in hand. And so Gordon's feeling is that the word additional helps to clarify why we're saying it's a 0 tax impact.
Are we required to include that comment about the estimated tax impact? Is that due to something our town voted on, or is that RSA language?
So the other question that I have is, when did the town vote to approve or follow RSA 32 V through B or
Right,
something?
right.
And I don't know the date of that. So that's going to take some research to figure out when that occurred. But that's the language that if the town did in fact vote to enact that, that's what allows this to occur and to appear. So I just don't know. It'll
When
take,
that was, okay.
you know, we have to go back into the files and go back through warrants to figure out where that occurred. Maybe another way to get at it is to look at old warrants and see if it appeared at some point in
Yeah.
history. And then you can probably say, well, then it must have been the year prior that it would have been approved. But yeah, so it'll take us some time to be able to answer that question, unless somebody knows off the top of their head when that was approved.
I think Mr. Kearns mentioned 2016, but I think that was, I'm not sure whether that was the time the town adopted it or when the RSA was written and adopted by the state.
I thought he said 2012. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And I think the other question is, and this is one that gets a little bit tricky in Litchfield, because there is a close relationship between the town and the school. So if the town adopted it, the school may have followed it without actually adopting it. So that's another question. I think we just got to go back and, you know, I think it's a really good housekeeping question about why is that in there. And we'll get an answer. There's a legal paper trail, but it just takes time to find it.
The town has a listing of town warrants, historical. Did I already send that?
You did, and it's actually awesome. And in fact, I would like to create one on our side.
Yeah,
of it, because
exactly.
They have the record going back to like the
Yeah.
60s, I think it is. So it's like really,
It's really, but they didn't have last year's on it, so.
it's just a spreadsheet
Or the
that
results
lists
of the votes.
everything
I would
going
recommend
back.
those.
Yeah.
New
But-
town administrator, benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. You have to get on Facebook that night.
So I think it's really important, one of the things that you had highlighted, looking at the town calendar on the town website, I do not see a scheduled budget committee meeting for the remainder of this month.
There is not. The budget committee, the original plan was to meet after the budget hearing, but there were several budget committee members who could not make it.
Right.
And that was the last I heard. So I don't have any emails looking for a rescheduled meeting or,
So for those budget
So-
committee members that listen in, right?
Yeah.
Again, there's a key date that on Thursday, January 26th is the deadline for the budget committee to deliver the final budget, i.e. we need your votes on these revised warrant articles within the next 2 weeks.
1 week, right?
although Dr. Jetty
Well,
also
Thursday's the
emailed them
26th.
too.
They could meet on Thursday the
Emailed the
26th
chair.
and vote.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is a week from tomorrow.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right, 1 week.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it's
A month week.
a little less time, but all set. Thank you.
So they can meet theoretically, well, they're less than 24 hours, so they can't do it, so it has to be next week. Yeah. Okay.
Public minutes, January 4th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the public minutes from January 4th.
I'll second.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes of January 4th. I added some comments in there for a change.
When did you?
And I just added one too.
There was a typo for the policy that
Yep.
actually happened on November 3rd, and the minutes reflected October 3rd.
Yeah.
So I put in a comment in there. I don't know how that flows back.
If you approve the amended, Jan will make that correction.
Okay.
And by the way, that's working really well, by having the comment there. She appreciated that.
Good.
It allowed us to do that.
Oh, good. See, I don't see his comments.
You have to open it. Like if you click
Oh,
in
there they
it-
are.
there.
Yeah.
Yep, there they are, November. Oh, there was 2.
Yeah, I just made one as well.
Okay.
So did
We
you,
have
I made a motion to
Motion
approve the
for the-
amended minutes.
I'll second that.
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Sorry. 500. Business and operations, first meeting of the month, update.
It's actually the second meeting of the month.
Yep, first meeting of the month, second meeting of the month report. So we have the report this evening.
Yep, so along with the reports, we have the LMS invoice from December. So quite a bit of work happened in December. There'll be a decent amount of work happening in January, but we are kind of shifting the work at LMS. So they have, the music room is unoccupied at this time, but cleaning for the music room will happen, I think, next Friday.
Oh, I
Pretty
think
soon.
this Friday.
This Friday,
Yeah.
actually, this Friday, which means that on Monday, all the spaces will be returned to the students and the staff, which is great. So it's actually like a school again. So,
Are they gonna clean the rug in the music room?
so they had protected the rug, but they will be vacuuming and cleaning the rug
Oh, good,
as well.
because there's a lot of, and this
Stuff.
and that. Yeah, it's good to clean
Yeah,
it.
so before they did the work, they had sealed the rug.
Oh, good.
And now that's off, and now they're kind of, because the work is done, so they'll be vacuuming that
Great.
rug as well.
I,
Yeah.
but to your point, our guys own a carpet extractor, so we can ask Dave and the crew to hit, I mean, why not? It's emptied out. Let's-
Right, right, it's a perfect
Get it.
time without all the chairs.
Yep, I'll send him an email and ask for that.
Don't say I said it. Okay, sorry.
So January, they'll be in the mechanical rooms, kind of, which is a back room, which is a custodian room as well, working on kind of tying in the final mechanics for that. And then February 17th is their tentative date to be done for a while, and then they'll remobilize at the end of June to do the kitchen and the cafeteria work. At some point between now and June, we'll be invoiced for most of the equipment that would be going into the kitchen, because the goal is to have everything on site, knowing that the turnaround time is when the kids leave and then when they come back. So we want all that work done before the kids come back. So as we start next school year, our goal is they don't see North Branch, even though they like seeing North Branch. They look up, they see a ceiling tile, they see everything that you'd expect to see, and it starts off as a normal school year.
Will they be pulling out the containers and their setup offices? And I mean,
Yep.
you drive through there, and it's a very active scene at 7 in the morning with all the trucks lined up.
Yep, so all of that will start to be pulled out. Some of the stuff will be pulled out on the 27th of this month, because there's different containers that belong to different people. You got North Branch, and then you got lighting in some areas, electrical in some. So the electrical will start to go, but the North Branch will be pulling all of their containers as well as their trailers. And then when they come back in the summer, they'll either just use a classroom or they'll use the hallway. So they're not bringing back all the stuff come the summer. They'll leave containers there to receive the equipment for the kitchen, but it'll be a lot different looking than it is now. So, yep. So part of the December invoice was we paid down half of the retainage that goes out to all the subcontractors. So that's something that gets paid down by half, 50% of the way through the project. So in reality, it should have been triggered maybe a couple months ago, but North Branch billed it in December, and therefore we paid it in December. So I don't know if there's any questions on North Branch?
So the remaining amount on the lease is what?
The remaining amount from the lease, let me, Let me dig for that a little bit more, be able to get back to you. While I dig, do you want to talk a little bit about our conversation today? Because I know that was brought up before too, but with the surge and the phase.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask where we stand with that.
So we've actually had 2 lengthy meetings talking about aspects of electricity that is beyond my knowledge, to be perfectly honest. But yesterday we had a conversation with Kay because, you know, here we are. We've suffered an outage of a compressor. We're not sure why that occurred. And we know that that's one of multiple compressors. I mean, there are 10 units on the roof, each with 2 compressors. Only one was affected. And it's going to cost us about $10,000 in labor costs to repair based on what occurred, which means we might need to file an insurance claim. There's all sorts of things that we still have to try to figure out about this. But what we wanted to understand is what might have happened and how do we make sure that when we add sophisticated solar and battery and switching equipment in, that we're not just at risk for having another problem. So great conversation. The electrical engineer, there's a new engineer that is on the job he's a sub with Dave Ely. His name is Scott. He replaces Bob, who had done all the design work. And Scott came today to the site, and we really had a deep dialogue about phase protection, which means you're losing one of the legs of the electricity coming into the building, and then surge protection, which means that there's a massive amount of voltage that comes across the line, and that can fry equipment. And just trying to understand what do we as owners need to do in order to protect. One good news is that Kay feels confident all of her equipment and the way she has everything built and all the switching done, she's protected. Her side of it, the inverters, etc., as she described, it can respond and shut off within 30 milliseconds, which is very fast, and it will protect the equipment on her side of it.
That's the solar side.
On the solar side.
Okay.
However, it is still possible that a surge or the loss of a phase could result in damage to equipment on our side, and so we're looking at what it would cost to install protection. And you know, the way they described it is you have to be specific about what you want for protection. You can put it right at the beginning and protect the whole school, but there's pluses and minuses to that, including the power can go out pretty often because it can get a quick little wave that's out of form, and it can trigger that, and now we have to reset everything, okay? Or you can put the protection further into the building and say, let's protect expensive electrical equipment. And you can then put it in place in specific sites off sub-panels and distribution panels. So that's the dialogue that we're having with everybody, and people are pricing stuff out because we don't know what that's going to cost. And I think when we have that, it's a change order. We would have to bring it back here. We'd have to have a dialogue about it. But we have to weigh it against, here's a $10,000 piece of equipment that was damaged. And so
This time, right? What happens when it's not covered by warranty?
well, exactly, and I can assure you in the meeting, you know, I said, representing the owners here,
Yep.
we have to talk about this because, you know, we have cut our budget next year relative to repairs and maintenance at LMS because everything is under warranty. But it's not. The equipment's under warranty.
Right.
The compressor's under, but the labor of it is not. And even Jack, who is the electrical, he owns the company that subbed the electrical work, and he said, you know, you never know. Mitsubishi may come back and say, that's not covered at all because it's an act of God. It's a electrical problem. It's beyond the scope of our equipment. I think what's helping us on this is that they said all the equipment that is coming in today tends to have phase protection built in. So actually what we think, see if you understood this the same way I did, which is that Mitsubishi's equipment may not have, it may have had a faulty phase protection in it, and that's why they're replacing it, because it should have, to their point, 1 fried and 9 didn't.
Right.
So what was different about the one? And chances are there was something that is covered under warranty and why they're replacing the equipment and the compressor for us. So I don't know what I didn't ask the question about what cost avoid. In other words, what's the value of the warranty claim? I don't know the answer to that. $10,000 is a steep bill on the labor side.
Right, it is, yeah.
Did I capture that right?
Yep. So, yeah, more information to come once they give us quotes for options for the surge protection. So, in regards to how much is left on the municipal lease after this payment, which has, I believe, gone through, it's a little over 839,000
Okay,
left on the lease.
got it. And I'm looking at the North Branch totals at the bottom of their invoice. Total remaining 1.25, right? So that makes sense with the 400,000 or so left over.
Yeah, so a question that I have to follow up with North Branch is that their estimate for December, once you put in retainage too, and their bill was about 60 or 65,000 less than their estimate. So I don't know if that's the case because we're just gonna have more work in January, which we're gonna have to pay for, or whether we're now at a point where they're starting to see, you know, we're not gonna estimate that you're gonna be left with 19,000, that, you know, we're gonna be under budget by 19,000. Maybe we're gonna be under budget by more than that, but I haven't changed numbers because we wanna plan for worst case scenario as far as what they present to us.
Yeah, I'm trying to balance those numbers, right, with what we said will be the fiscal year carryover into next budget.
Yep.
Right, and ballpark, I think we said somewhere in the 450 range. I
Yep.
don't remember the exact number, right? But that would add up to that number that carries over to next fiscal year.
Yes,
So if that changes, obviously we'd like to get ahead of that and know that.
yep, definitely. So other questions on North Branch?
No.
So then after that is the financial reports, which again, go back to December, being the last month that was fully complete. Questions on those at all?
Thank you for your responses to the questions asked.
No? You're welcome.
Asked my questions already. Thank you for those answers.
So I really don't have an update from the budget committee because we did have that special meeting. We met last week and the update kind of came then. And as far as we're understanding, the budget committee hasn't met since then. Last thing I have on my agenda is just kind of a discussion because we do have those LMS impact fees. We have talked about using them in two different ways. As of now, they haven't been requested because I just want to make sure that we're all in agreement with what we should do. So the two ways would be to apply it towards the first municipal lease payment, which is due in like a month or two. And this would be similar to my understanding of what the town did for a payment on the firehouse. The second thing would be to have it be reimbursed for part of a North Branch invoice. So different pros. You know, if we apply it towards the municipal lease payment, that means there's less as we look at making sure we have a fund balance at the end of this year or making sure we cover everything this year. That would help out with that. As we look towards next year, though, we know that there's still a gap between the municipal lease and how much work there is to be done. So if we got reimbursed for it for a North Branch invoice, there'd be less of a gap. So it's whether, you know, I don't know the best way to put it, but
What do you recommend?
I would recommend using it towards a municipal lease because at the end of the day, we have to make sure we're covering this year first.
Anyone else have any comments?
That was
Well,
my
what was the
answer.
I
amount?
would
It was
rather
50,000, right?
Yeah, I would
So,
rather.
yeah, like
pay it
49,000.
Earlier.
That was my instinct, but yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, absolutely. But now you need to go to the board and ask, right?
Yep, so I'll write them a letter.
Okay.
So I'll write the board of select.
Apply towards the first municipal lease payment.
Yep.
I think, you know, a motion from the board may be helpful toward the select board if they know that.
I'll make a motion to apply for the LMS impact fees and apply it toward the first municipal lease payment.
In the amount of,
Well, I'd have to go to the trustee and kind of see with
Okay.
interest.
It earns interest every month, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's north of 49,000, but.
yeah.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
right, we're on the second, yeah.
Further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
If I just may, since I want to
Almost on
get,
time.
I know, I want to get one quick plug in though about North Branch, and it's that, so they are winding down. Jen is planning a, kind of a celebration and thank you. I mean, honestly, the guys who work for another company show up at our schools every single day and have gotten to know everybody. So the student council is organizing
Oh,
something.
that's awesome. I
She
love
was-
that.
She was hoping to do it mid-February, but then Dylan was like, no, we're gonna be, by mid-February, I'm on a skeleton crew, so we need to figure that piece of it out, so
That's
just,
fantastic.
it may come together quickly. I'm gonna ask Jen to make sure that she, invites us
Yeah.
and the board. If you can make it, great. If not, it's like a 10-15 minute thank you from the kids, but I think it'd be awesome, because these
Yeah.
guys they've done fabulous work over there, so
agree.
we'll keep you informed.
Great.
Awesome.
Reports. Did anyone have any committee meetings this week?
I did.
The past 2 weeks. You did?
I
Hold
did.
on.
Get
Stop
outta
the.
here.
You would have. Look at how excited he is.
I know.
All right.
I'm gonna get this here.
Andrew, would you like to share your meeting notes?
The website committee met yesterday.
Ooh.
We're going to continue meeting every other week for the foreseeable future
Yay.
to start to action and drive the website forward. We shared some, high-level thoughts, design ideas as a committee, which we're going to take back to the website company and have this be an iterative process, right?
Can I ask who's on that committee with you?
So Mr. Barca is our community member. We have our IT director, myself from the school board. Ms. Doucette was a teacher, and then there's intended to be representation at the middle school and high school as well, although those two members couldn't join yesterday.
That's great.
And that would be Amy Provenzel and Julie Green. They're the, I don't even know the title.
Tech leads.
Tech 1, Tech 2s, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be on the lookout. The initial feedback shared was to change the green.
Yeah.
To condense the white space. If you look at that front page, it was very heavy on non-usable white space, just to reimagine how that looks and feels. So I guess the question that I have for the school board is, on our district website today, there's actually a school board menu option. I don't use that aside from locating policies. Does anybody on the board go to that school board link to find other information
Yeah.
relative to school board?
I do. I go there to find policies, agendas.
Policies I
Minutes.
get. Minutes is there too,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the ideas was, instead of having school board called out, because we sampled a lot of other districts, it's pretty unique to have school board called out on
Yeah.
the header, but to have it embedded in another menu
Yeah.
option.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
That's fine.
And it saves real
It-
estate,
Yeah, it
right?
could be
Right,
embedded
right.
under
Sounds like
district.
you had some great
You want
conversation.
the forefront to be things
School
users
related.
users
not
are going to
school
use
board
the
up
most.
up front.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Great.
So more to come. You all have the link to the beta site.
I have
Check in from
comments
time to
somewhere.
time and take a look at it.
Can we get rid of the Siberian tiger? We were a Bengal tiger school.
It's very important.
Noted.
Distinction.
Keep that on Sandy's radar, but I agree with you.
That's
The happy thumbs up tiger, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Griffey.
Tony the tiger,
oh my
not
goodness.
Right.
vicious tiger.
Anyone else?
I had a grading and reporting committee meeting yesterday as well. We ended up meeting by building, and so I couldn't attend both, so I went to the high school grading and reporting meeting, and it was good. We had a lot of good conversation about formatives, late policy, and then particularly some of the next steps, which is looking at peer cohorts to find out what some of our surrounding districts are doing when it comes to counting formatives and what that looks like.
The grading of the competencies.
Correct. And so it was a good conversation, and more to come.
Budget committee, there was a budget hearing last Thursday. Anybody's welcome to watch the video for that if they would like. You already gave some updates too. Emergency management, we're meeting tomorrow. I think I just got the agenda from you today, Dr. Jetty. And then the wellness committee meeting, again, open to the public. The meeting is February 7th, 3:30 p.m. at the Campbell High School Learning Commons.
Great.
We had a facilities meeting last week on Wednesday, which was recorded and is posted. I shared it on the school board Facebook page as well. We discussed the kind of the topography of the land that we have on the ballot for purchase this year, and kind of did an overview of what it includes. So there's kind of the third closest to Albuquerque is where we're looking for the school to be sited, and then there's a middle third that is mostly wetlands, and then the bottom third has some deep ravines in it. So of the 35 acres, there's, the architect feels there's plenty of room to build the school site. The state requires at least 10 acres, but we don't even think we can, we think our footprint will be smaller than that and plenty of space.
Without impacting wetlands.
Without, yeah. So there might be some impact to some wetlands. There's like a finger that runs through that we might have to mitigate there, but the majority of the wetlands will be untouched.
Is that including like space for like a playground and other?
Yep, including parking lots, bus loops, space for
One
the
soccer
playground.
field, playground.
One soccer field, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I recommend watching the video. It's really, it's a good visual to have.
Yeah.
We talked about the building aid rankings that we've discussed as a board. We had invited our state legislators to attend this meeting. None actually were able to attend, or no one showed up. So we talked about, you know, the need to advocate for support for increasing building aid for all schools in New Hampshire, given the number of applicants, the number of projects on that list that are in great need. I think, you know, we really need to, as a state, to invest in our infrastructure, and building and renovating schools is a great way to do it. And advocate for considering skyrocketing costs due to inflation. So that was another big discussion that we had, was that the price tag that we had on this project, due to construction costs and you know, just general inflation, has gone up. Kyle shared a spreadsheet that said, well, you know, well, general inflation has gone up, I think we were saying 8 to 9%. Construction costs as its own category have gone up 25%.
Wow.
So with that, when we applied for building aid, we had a $35 million price tag on it. And depending on what the market does and what inflation does and what construction costs do, you know, we're incurring potentially a much greater cost. So in response to that, it would be great to have some other aid to help offset the cost to our taxpayers. And then Ms. Grantham gave an update on LMS, which I think Doug kind of hit on those points pretty well. And I think that was about it.
So what are we looking at?
So it's just occurring to
Yeah.
me, because this is on the warrant and because we have an audience out there, I think it's worth taking 10
go
seconds
over it
to go
again?
through
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
So that is the 35 acres. And Tina's right that the state says you have to buy a 10-acre piece of property. We're buying a 35-acre piece of property, or proposing to. So that meets that standard. You don't have to develop all 10 acres. Kyle said he has, you know, used only 5 acres of a 10-acre lot in the past. So he's estimating there's about 8 buildable acres here, which is plenty for the school that we're proposing. So again, if you look at this, Albuquerque is all the way to the right. You can see the right-of-way for Albuquerque Avenue. You can see the house lots on Westview that are to the north. And then you can see the area that's over in this area here, which is where the school would end up being. There's kind of gentle sloping in, and then it levels off. This is the area that's wet. We knew it divided the property in half. We were surprised to find out that there was this finger of wetlands that kind of comes over here, and you'll see that this dry upland area here is going to play into the design. And then the last thing, as Tina said, is way back here are those deep ravines. And again, that's property that we would not be accessing for the school. So that's the overall wetland mapping on the 35 acres. So then if you impose the picture of the school, so this is the school building, the angel-shaped school building that we had proposed for another site, you can see where it fits in on that corner of the property. Kyle's proposing that the access is down here, which is actually really good sight line along Albuquerque if you access the property from further away from the fire station. The other thing is, if you look, you can see this is the driveway right here for the fire station. So fire trucks would be coming out right there, okay, that kind of gray area. And so what we're thinking is that providing a pull straight across emergency access point in, you'll see this in a second, but it also will keep cars that are stacking up away from that area. So accessing the lot from down here is what Kyle is proposing. You would then come in, have access to parking, car loading, And then, of course, the buses would go around the back of the building and would have bus loading over here. So what's not on here is that emergency egress to come directly across from the fire station, but it would basically come in here and then access the road. The play field is then built. This is a regulation soccer field that's on top of that upland area. Okay, so you can see that there's a little bit of wetland mitigation in this corner, but otherwise we can fit a soccer field in. And Kyle's envisioning that there would be playgrounds accessing this, so there'd be a playground kind of nested into this part of the building. And remember, this is a bus loop, so there aren't going to be cars going around there more than 40 minutes a day, 20 in the morning and 20 in the afternoon. So there's plenty of space over here for a very naturalized playground, hopefully on sand that doesn't freeze rock solid in the winter, but at any rate, there's plenty of area down at this end of the school for a playground separate from a play field. So that's conceptually what Kyle has put together, and what we will be presenting to the public as to how we envision plugging ahead and putting a school on that site.
My question is, when Campbell was built, right, it had to have its own named road in front. How does this incorporate that? Is that like a statute within the town? Like, I don't know why that was built that way.
So my understanding is if you drive down Albuquerque, there are no driveways that come out on Albuquerque. And so even the pre-existing, so for example, right across from Campbell, there's sort of that weird, I call it like the Jersey service road that runs parallel and then comes back out. I can't remember the name of it, Stark Cardinal, some bird.
Yeah.
And that's because there are no driveways there. So what that did is, I believe that was the original Albuquerque, and then when they built the main thoroughfare Albuquerque that connected, that became like a loop area. Same thing for Highlander. So you pull into Highlander, and then that goes along the side of the school and back out again. And so again, this would probably have a name on it. I don't know what it would be, but.
I guess I don't look at that as a street, though. I look at that as a pulling into a parking lot and then turning around and coming back out. Right?
Yeah, but you could say the same
It's the
thing
same
for
for
Campbell.
Does that? My question is, do we think this meets the ordinance, or whatever that reason is?
We'll double check that with Kyle. I mean, I think he did this as a quick sketch to show how it could fit. You know, I think of this, you're going to have one lane turning in, obviously. I think you almost have to have 2 lanes turning out, because cars that are pulling out onto Albuquerque and are able to take a right turn are going to be way quicker getting out of there than if you're waiting for a left. So, you know, I think we don't want to have cars waiting to turn right stuck behind somebody waiting to turn left. So you could envision almost like 3 lanes at that end. But we would have to go through planning and get it all approved as part of it. So
Yeah, I think as you look at the roads and the parking lot, Kyle seemed to be very happy where the school went, where the playfield went. And then, he said, this is a rough sketch, and I think he would want some more help from Dan and other people as far as how do you have the flow of traffic go. So while the school might stay there, the flow of traffic might look completely or slightly different than is shown there. There still would be a loop going around the building, but where you see the parking lots might not end up being where the parking lots
There's
are.
Dan.
Yeah, based on this, and this isn't obviously anywhere close to final, but we did have discussions because kind of the reality of what we deal with, like, we talked about, do we replace the buses and the cars because we have more of a car backup where the buses, so those are the finer details. Also adding a second egress, and then also working with how do we then also navigate the midday pickup, which is the preschool pickup and then the preschool drop off. One thing too about this that I like that just wasn't mentioned is the building design. If you think about it on Albuquerque too, so the right side of the building is the 1-story. The left side of the building is the 2-story, with the second story being the one below. So on the road, this is going to appear as a 1-story building as opposed to a large 2-story building kind of in the center of town. It'll appear as a facade of as a 1-story building because that second story is built in and lower.
Right.
And actually, it was, again, designed for a separate site, but the contours of this site play right into the same thing. It was like, remember we had the conversation about how far do we get into conceptual design?
Right.
And what would it cost to pick up and move it? It's not costing a lot to pick up and move it because it's almost
Yeah.
the same thing, so.
Can I ask why there isn't 2 lanes going in so the buses can use the route and the cars, like, would the.
Those are the higher level conversations that we started to
Because I
have.
can just see a bus stuck behind a minivan whose
Cars,
kid's
right.
boot
And that was
got
mentioned
stuck,
at the
yeah.
meeting.
And I'll be honest, we had this conversation. You can watch a video, and at some point, Kyle's like, "Guys, this is like 45 minutes worth of work. Like
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
that's how much
Yeah.
he's into it." He's like,
We
"I
gotta
literally
work
just
site.
see some lines. I wanted to make sure that the
Right.
building fit on
There
the
was
site."
also,
You know,
I think there was brief discussion about maybe allowing the buses to enter through that back entrance.
yeah. So
They go,
Like
they would,
Campbell does.
right,
instead of looping here,
yeah,
straight out.
straight out there, and then they can go around the building, and the cars can stay in the front, so they would avoid the cars at that.
The other
that
thing
side
is,
anyway.
and we'd have to have the conversation with
Yeah.
Kyle again, but when the buses go around the building that way, the door faces away from the building, so every child has to walk in front of a bus.
Oh, no.
And so you can basically reverse that loop if it's for buses only, and the door is on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Work with that, right? So there's a bunch of things here that still need to be tweaked and adjusted, but we'll make sure, trust me, a lot of work will go into the traffic component of this
Yeah.
because
Because we know what we have now.
we're saying to the public, we have to solve a traffic problem on 3A.
That
We
will
don't
create
need
a
to create a
traffic-
traffic
yeah.
problem on
Right,
Albuquerque
right,
either.
right.
So we need to make sure that we do this correctly, and there's gotta be enough room to get off and stack on the property.
Yeah.
And so that's to come.
Great.
But thank you for taking that time, because I do think this is helpful. And if you want the full depth, deep dive, watch that facilities meeting.
Will do.
New business, mid-year progress reports. Dr. Jetty, district, mid-year report.
Yes, so, find it, hang on a second. So, Principal Mitchell gave his, I'll just quickly do the district side of it. And so they reminded the board that we had 3 goals that we set. It was getting the LMS building upgrades completed, it was work on the new elementary school project, and then it was the culture and climate work that we're doing as a district. So my current progress updates are that phase 2, I'm saying it remains on track, but we have to put an air quotes around on track, because it's on track in a supply chain issue. I mean, in the perfect world, this was a SummerSlam project and we were done in August, but that hasn't panned out. We heard from the electrician today that the main part of the electrical thing is the main panel is still on back order, and he's hoping to have it sometime in March, but that's a key component to getting everything finalized with the electricity even. So there are still supply chain issues. But you'll notice that the solar, the PPA has been signed, has been turned over to Kay. The expectation is that the solar will begin in March. It will become live and connected in May. It'll be tweaked and adjusted over June and turned over as ready to go in July. So that's sort of the time frame that we have right now. But again, we may learn about some supply chain issues relative to solar that we're not aware of at this time. The kitchen renovation work, it looks like they're going to be ready to begin as soon as school gets out in June. And it's a June, July. I should put August in there because they were turning it back over to us on late in August. And so we have the timeline. We're tweaking and adjusting it. The only thing I will say is it felt a little tight on the August end. However, North Branch has over-delivered on every timeline that they've given us. They've not really missed any of those dates. So I suspect that it'll be done and ready to go for the start of the year. And then everything else, the punch list. So we're going to be walking the building with North Branch early February, and that will get the punch list finalized so that everything will be done other than the kitchen and the solar by March 1st is the expectation. For the new elementary school, you can see the status update. I think everybody knows where we are with that, and now it's in the hands of the voters to determine if the land purchase is something we can go ahead with, and if we're going to replenish the fund that we would use to continue the design work. And then the last thing is culture and climate, a little bit different from projects, but we do have our the Center for School Climate and Learning working very closely with us. There've been 3 meetings with the schools. There's further conversation in a minute about the surveys that are going to be administered. And I feel that what I'm hearing from the principals is the work is valuable, and they're very eager to get the survey results and then to have the students start planning the action research that they're going to do based upon what they learn. The goal now is to administer the surveys the week prior to February vacation. So we want to stay on track to be able to get those surveys administered.
And we have staff and parent surveys as well.
There are 3 surveys.
Yep.
It's a student, it's a staff, and it's a parent survey.
Great.
And we're going to go through all the details on that this evening.
Great.
So those are the updates, and what I thought would make sense is that we would have the principals present when they came. If I knew Principal Hess was here, I would have asked him to do it tonight, but he has until February 15th, and Ms. Grantham will do February 1st, so that you'll know exactly where we stand against the goals we set back in.
Will you just keep putting this link on the agenda?
Absolutely, yep.
Great.
And I have already shared with Ms. McDonald and Ms. Ames the link for the February 1st draft agenda, so just to make sure that we stay on track and can get that pushed out. So
I
and
haven't looked at it.
It has
I wanted
those
to get
links
through tonight first.
but it has all those links on it, so
Yes.
it's there for you.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right, Mrs. Grantham not here?
No, so she's
No, so
gonna go next. She's gonna go on the first.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
That's
Just
okay.
a note also, I am going to be unable to make the February 1st meeting. I have a conflict, just so
And
everybody
the
knows.
deliberative, I'll put that in the deliberative. Got it, February 1st.
Yep, I'm going to be out of the country for
Delib-
deliberative.
Deliberative. Last chance, Jake. We're on time. And no takers. Academic surveys.
Yep. So basically, I shared with you a PowerPoint that Bill Preble put together, and I think a lot of what's in here is what the board heard back in. I'm trying to remember when we first heard from Bill. I think it was last spring actually that he was proposing to come in and do this work. So I don't want to repeat the whole PowerPoint with you. To me,
I love it. I'm glad you shared it with us. I couldn't
I
get a visual.
know,
Heidi and I
especially the
were actually
kindergarten
able
first.
to
The
meet him.
survey? Yeah.
Yeah, we were actually able to meet him, and I did have questions like, how could a kindergartner fill this out? Well, looking at it, it's very easy for a kindergartner to fill out with possibly some assistance.
yeah, so and to make that point, that we met with the oversight team because there were some questions that we needed to have answered relative to the survey. So the oversight team included the chair and the vice chair of the school board. We had, we invited both associations, we had the principals there, and the point was, okay, how do we want to proceed around some of these questions here? So the key thing is that, in our opinion, this is an academic survey. If you look at the questions that are actually on the survey, the approach that we're taking is that we're inviting everybody to participate in this. We're not requiring a survey. It's not you must fill this out in class, but we're inviting people to do it. And some of that messaging will be coming from the student body themselves.
Mike, can you enlarge that or share it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Couldn't
I don't have
access
access.
the slides.
I have it.
Why is there
For
not?
the slideshow.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I could see the surveys,
I
but
can
not-
email to everybody because I was persistent and kept requesting access, and he emailed it to me just now, so.
Oh.
All right, so,
Little pit bull.
Yeah.
all right, so I am sharing it with each of you. I apologize. I didn't realize that
The survey questions came through. It was
Yeah.
just the academic,
Slides.
the slides.
I'm sending it. Oh, hold up. Yeah.
All right, and then the other thing is, let me
I have access now.
zoom and make it a little bit bigger on the screen. So the students, if I understand it correctly, at the last session, they were working on their messaging to their peers. In other words, explaining and shooting a video that's going to go out that says, this is who we are, this is why we're asking these questions, and this is why it's important that you give us good information on that. So the message for that will come from the students. And I believe they're shooting a video that will go to parents also to help promote why the survey is being administered.
I believe it's one video.
To everybody,
That's one
to
video.
all audiences.
And just to speak to the work too, the high school team is so excited that they're like, can we go help the elementary students? So I figured,
Yeah, we heard all about that. Yeah, you were there. We were there. I think it's fantastic. They're all working. We have some very excited high schoolers to work with the littles. even implementing the surveys to helping the younger ones.
Obviously, if there's a student or a family that doesn't want to participate, that's
Yep.
fine. I mean, we're gonna invite them to do it, we're gonna explain why we're doing this, but if somebody says, I don't want to do it, that's okay too. But
Can opt out.
So what's the distinction in terms of classifying this as an academic survey?
That's
That
what
means
we're
we
gonna
can give
talk
it to
about.
students, or that means,
the distinction
what
is
is the
this.
implication of that?
So Senate Bill 43, which is on slide number 10, so there were communities that were frustrated because schools would administer a survey without ever informing parents. And in some cases, like if you take the youth risk behavior survey, you're asking very personal questions about drug use and other practices that some families would not be comfortable a school surveying. Even though it's not a school survey, we're administering it in the school. And so the bill was written to say, if you're going to do this, you need to have explicit permission. In other words,
An opt-in.
people have to opt in.
We do it in
They have to
Hudson.
give permission to take it, okay? However, and that's for non-academic surveys.
Okay.
An academic survey, that doesn't apply, and I think that's the key thing that we want to make sure that we're all on the same page with tonight. That an academic survey is an opt-out experience. So somebody can say, yeah, I'm just going to opt out. I don't want to do it. But we don't have to go through the process of collecting
Permission slips.
1,100 permission forms to do it and tracking that and then making sure that only the people with the forms are the ones who take it. So our stance is that this is an academic survey, and when you look at the questions, they're directly related to school experiences. They're directly related to how students and staff in our school feel about the academic components of being in school. And so we wanted to just have that dialogue tonight, and I think it's fair to say the Oversight Committee agreed with that premise, but we want to make sure that everybody understands
Is there a
it.
definition somewhere of what an academic survey is? I mean,
So
it seems like it is, but it's a legal thing.
I think it's one of those, if it's tied to academics, in other words, if we believe a student who doesn't feel safe in a school is not going to academically perform, then a survey to get at safety is tied to academics, and therefore, Bill's adamant that this is an academic survey because of the questions that are asked. The other thing is that you're correct. I gave the board the actual surveys. I'll pull them up on the screen so the public can see them if they wish. But the survey at the kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, is basically
Pictures.
some quick demographics, and then they circle. Are they agreeing with the green thumbs up or disagreeing with the thumbs down? The questions are pretty straightforward. The playground is a safe and fun place for me. Yes or no, or not sure. So very easy for students to take the survey, and they may have to have the questions read to them, obviously, by a teacher to make sure that they know what they're being asked. And you can see it's relatively brief. This says 28 questions, but there's a numbering issue at the beginning. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of zeros, and then it starts with number 6. So I'm sure that'll fix in the final version.
There's questions on here like, I feel safe riding the bus, or I enjoy riding the bus. Well, some kids don't ride the bus, so what do you?
You could put not sure.
Is it not sure or not applicable?
What, are you a kindergarten?
So the way that they,
They're in part of the direction is you can, if it doesn't apply, you don't have to.
Okay.
Skip it.
Yeah.
You just skip it. All right.
And our intent is to publish this survey on our website, to send the links home to all the families. There's nothing hidden about this. There's no,
There's no gotcha.
there's no mystery about the questions that are going to be asked. So we have this now. We can put this on our websites, and our principals can communicate it out. I would not be sending the kindergarten survey home in the high school newsletter, for example. We should target, this is the survey that will be asked in our school. And the only person who has 2 surveys is Dan, because of the grade 3-4 survey being a little different.
So you want us to vote on whether we should call it an academic survey?
So I don't know that we need a vote as much as an understanding, because somebody could come forward and say, wait a minute, there's a law in New Hampshire that says you have to give people the opportunity to opt in, and you didn't follow that. And our answer is that's only on non-academic surveys. When Campbell administers the YRBS sometime this spring. I think we just got,
I put March. We've got to the end of April. I put March for the month we will put it in.
so that will be an opt-in survey, and families will be able to say, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to opt into that. And we're clear about that being a non-academic survey, but this one we feel is an academic survey. So if the board is comfortable with that, we'll just plug ahead and communicate the way we're talking tonight, which is to get the survey links out there, get the dates out there, get the video, etc., knowing that we're going to get, I don't know, 20 letters that say, I'd like to opt Susie out of it.
Sure.
And it's easy for parents to opt out, you just don't do it. That's easier, right? But we'll find some other activity for Susie or Johnny in class because their family sent in a note saying no, and that's okay.
Which is reasonable.
That's okay.
Have you read all the questions?
I personally have not read every one of them, no.
Yeah.
You see some that are concerning?
No, there's a lot here. That's
Yeah.
that's my question.
They're going to be long, it's a long
What
survey.
if there is
yeah.
one that's concerning that we're just not seeing or talking about right now?
They've given the survey over 1,000 times,
Yeah.
they said.
Yep.
And every year they reflect after a survey is given and they work on improving it and changing it. But this survey or a version of this survey has been given over 1,000 times in numerous states across the country.
I feel like he said that it was 30 minutes. Do you remember that? I recall him saying it wasn't going to take that long
Take it?
to take the survey.
I think you're right.
So even though there's a lot of it may look, I think he said that it shouldn't take the students more than, they'll give them 30 minutes, but it shouldn't take more than 20 to have it done. I just thought it was really good to have it transparent. That
Yeah,
was,
I like that.
for
Absolutely.
parents to be able to see it.
Yeah.
And
Love the idea behind it. What do we do with the information we get from it?
So what's going to happen is that Bill's team will analyze all the data, and they will then bring the raw data back. They will scrub the data, by the way. So, honestly, if there's a specific comment about a staff member, that will be neutralized so that it doesn't say Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so in it. The only thing he said is that if there's a direct allegation of something that he feels is a duty to report, it will be reported discreetly to us. You never know what somebody writes on a form, right? So we want to make sure that we can, if there's a claim there that we need to know about, we can act on that. But otherwise, the data that's turned over to students will be general in trends, and they'll be able to ask more questions about it, like, I wonder if more boys than girls said that, or what have you. So then you can take the demographic data at the beginning and do some sorting on it in order to help understand what's going on in our schools, what are the experiences like for our students. And I'm going to point out to the board, one of the questions that the Oversight Committee wrestled with was the question that you see on the high school 3-column survey. If you look at the student survey and the second question in, it's a gender question. And we wanted to make sure that we asked that question correctly, and that was important for us. And so where the committee, the advice was that we ask it the way it's worded, which is male, female, not listed with a blank, which would allow somebody to clarify on their identity and rather not say.
It's not exclusive, and it's also not listing different things.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way.
Why wouldn't it be consistent? Like, because one of these other surveys says I identify my gender as male, female, rather not say.
Where's that one? On which survey?
This is actually on the elementary.
the elementary school, they said
It should be consistent, Andrew, so that's a good catch.
But
'Cause- and I thought he said that, I thought at the elementary survey it was, the kindergarten survey,
Kindergarten is boy, girl,
yes.
Yeah.
right? And then the 3-4 is I identify as.
And that's different than the high school, middle school one. Let us clarify that.
Yeah, 'cause
That's not our intent. I
I
think,
can see some community feedback on that,
yeah.
and that's what made me raise the
That's what
question.
we were trying to
What
avoid.
else is in here that we're just not seeing on the
So
front page?
the questions that we see, are these sample questions, or is this the entire survey?
that's the survey.
Okay.
The difference is at the high school, it's got the 3 columns because it shows how
Right.
a similar related question is asked of the 3 groups.
Oh, I see.
Staff,
Yeah.
parents, and students. You see that
Can we
at the
have
header?
another week to look through these questions?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Red flag, the
Remind
ones
me
you-
again, right? This is great work from Mr. Preble and et cetera. Can you remind me again, are we in an active contract with him? Is this pay as you go? Like, how much are we paying for his services for this?
So we work this into our grant, and so now I'm trying to think of which grants. I think it's Title IV grant that is paying for this.
So it's grant money, it's not direct operating budget money?
It's zero operating budget money. It's all grant funded, and it's all about school culture and climate. The grant covers school culture and climate, so the work fed right into what we're able to do. So in the past, the same grant has been used to bring Challenge Day into the high school, culture and climate work. And so this year, we're using it for this work with our students. And next year, it's a 2-year commitment with them.
And I think to me, what's important is it isn't just about student data. This is staff survey.
Absolutely.
And I think we're going to learn a lot of, and understand maybe some trends and what's going on with our staff. And
So the staff, and I haven't looked through it, they would just receive the 3rd survey on here, correct?
They would just.
Middle column.
Middle column,
Okay.
depending on whatever school.
MSHS staff survey,
Right.
yes.
All right, so we're all gonna
You
review
know,
it.
my gut is that's also the elementary staff. I would think they're
I thought
taking.
there's columns on the elementary one too for staff
For staff?
and parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
It must be the same
But it's
questions.
the same questions? That's where I'm confused, right?
Should be, right?
It should be, but
Staff is staff.
I don't know that
Yeah.
that's specifically clear on this.
Okay.
Because I'm reading it as middle school and high school, and it's different from what I'm seeing on the elementary
Oh, just the
school.
way it's listed on, presented on the,
Yeah.
in the table? Yeah.
yeah, but I'm looking at the domain 1 school safety elementary and compared to the middle school, high school, and it's the same. I feel
Same.
safe at the
Yeah.
school. Our school has a
It's
threat
just
assessment
organized
team that
differently.
routinely meets. So I think the student stuff is different, but the staff is this uniform between the 3 schools.
That makes me feel better, and the parent one's the same.
From what I can
yeah.
see, yeah.
Okay.
I think two of the really neat things that they talked about with this is, first and foremost, we're going to show the results to everyone that takes it. That's not often something
Right.
that happens with surveys. And then the second thing was, they're pretty general questions with spots for comments. And they say the comments that they get from students, like, do I feel safe in school? And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of kids, but the amount of responses and comments they get in those sections, that really helps kind of move the dial when we look at what needs to be enacted after we have this data. So, because we get a lot of questions about, well, that's pretty general, what does that mean? And they were like, we've done this 1,000 times. We assure you, the data you will get from this, from the comments that kids write, particularly high school students, I don't know what it's going to be at the other schools, is really where the great depth of data will get.
Great.
That's also the importance of driving consistency of questions, right? So you have that benchmark across.
Consistency of question and then buy-in from the students. And I think the student videos,
it's a great idea.
that's, I understand the high school, I think, is doing 2 videos. There might be only one at the other schools, but the high school is doing one that's student-driven, meant for students, each other, and then a more general one. And hopefully that gets, again, it attracts the buy-in.
Awesome. Anything else, Dr. Jetty?
No, I mean, so I'm hearing a couple of things. You want this to come back at your next meeting, which
Yes.
is easily accomplished. And the general sense is it feels academic, and the
Yes.
idea that we can proceed, because if we were to change our mind on that, then it would take longer. It may impact the implementation because
because you need
it'll
to
take
opt
longer to collect all the permissions.
instead of
So
opt out.
I think.
Do you
if-
want feedback on the survey ahead of time? Because I have a few things already that
I don't
just
think we can-
specific to the.
It's his survey. Is it the same survey he's given in every school? Because we can't change.
Adjusted and reviewed as they've
It's
gone through
adjusted.
the
They talk about the
process.
portrait of a learner, so that's our
Okay.
school.
I would say the question of whether or not it's an academic survey, I think we should answer clearly tonight, but the actual review of the questions, I think taking another week or two to digest and then give any feedback that we want to, and that feedback can be incorporated or not at the
Well,
next meeting.
and I think another key thing is so the gender question
Yep.
should be the same between the two. But I think the concept of we're purposely offering two choices in kindergarten, first and second grade, and then we're purposely providing more opportunity for students to identify at the upper levels, but it should be asked the same way.
Right.
And especially I'm thinking about students that are going from fourth grade to fifth grade in a 2-year process. We need to make sure that we understood data's got to translate up to the middle school correctly. So
What's the value of even asking the question? Why does it matter?
So-
and why does the ethnicity question matter?
what he has indicated is that any group that feels marginalized, and the question becomes defining marginalized, but girls could feel marginalized in a school, and students who are having different identities are possibly a marginalized group. The ethnicity question is a marginalized
Students
group.
with disabilities.
And if you're trying, disability is a marginalized group, and so if you're trying to get at what is our system safe for all students? Does everybody arrive in our schools every day feeling in a safe place and ready to learn? Then you have to ask those questions, because if it picks up on a trend that a group that is historically marginalized is reporting in our system, in our schools, that they're not feeling safe, that's
Special ed's
critical.
another one.
Yes, I saw special ed, yeah.
And honestly, the largest group that is marginalized in New Hampshire tends to be driven by poverty levels. And so, again, Litchfield does not have like large groups. We already know this from our state building aid, that our ability to attract state building aid is driven by the overall wealth in Litchfield. However, there are still students for whom food insecurity is an issue. And so how does that translate into our schools? How does that work in the school setting? And do they report a difference? And is it something we can then address as a system? So that's why asking those questions, I think, is important. We had pulled some data among the high school, among the administrative team relative to district demographics. And, you're asking the ethnicity question. Our highest percentage is actually a mixed race. So you have students who are saying, I have mixed backgrounds, Hispanic father and white mom, or vice versa, so anyway, when you put all those combos together, is there a difference in the way they report their experience? This will tell us.
What's that? Before we start old business, would the board mind if I brought Mr. Mitchell up to talk about kindergarten registration before? That was one part that
Take a
I
mask
did.
break, but
Just this, if you could keep it quick, like what's the process and what's going on with our
Oh, yeah.
kindergarten numbers?
Sure. So, kindergarten registration will actually open up officially the second week of February. And so the reason why is with the new enrollment system, they have to go in, they do the initial registration. Mrs. Wilcox, our secretary, our admin one, receives it and then sends them a reply back. And so she's actually going to be off. She's going to be on leave for the first week of February. So what we're going to do is we're going to initiate it second week of February. And so then they can go in. So right now, if they go in, you can't necessarily select it. Well, some people go in and think they've registered. They technically haven't. And so we're going to communicate that out. We're going to use the signboard. We're going to use our social media. So if you know of anyone who's not yet connected to the school because of an older sibling or anyways, encourage them to follow us on Facebook, because without a community newspaper, that's really our best avenue between the letterboard, which obviously I'm restricted to, 3 lines. And I mean, it's worse. Like putting on on the signboard is worse than trying to tweet something out. I mean, it's less characters. So we're going to communicate that out. And so then the process will go fluidly. We're expecting that pre-K registration will probably start right around the 1st of March. One thing that we are hoping to accomplish this year, which we haven't in my first 2 years, so it's a goal of ours, is to actually establish what the pre-K program will look like going ahead. What we have done is we've taken the population of registration and then let that define what the program is going to be. We're going to try to define what the program is, and then so that when they sign up, they know we have this many slots, you're this number on the list, and we'll be able to process through it. So I'm working with the pre-K team. I believe we're meeting tomorrow afternoon for second draft to finally finalize what that is, so that when they sign up for pre-K, they know it's either going to be a Monday, Tuesday morning for 3-year-olds, a Thursday, Friday for 4, so we're going to be able to spell that out. So when they register, they know what it is that they're going for, and they don't have to wait till July or August and then wait on a waiting list. And then July or August, we say, you can get into our Monday, Wednesday program, and they say, well, I've already arranged for that. So we're trying, we hope that if we take a little bit more time to be careful earlier on in the process, it'll pay dividends. So kindergarten is coming mid-February, and then pre-K will happen in March.
Thank you. Old business, COVID plan.
Yep, so, excuse me, the sheet, by the way, I think I have the right link this time. I apologize for that in the past. But if you look at January, you'll notice that our staff positive COVID numbers actually crept up. We went from 1 up to 4. But now we're down to 0.
Never as good as Campbell, though.
And you'll also notice Dan's pointing at his low streak here.
Yeah.
So his attendance, remember, 5% is the threshold to be in low, which is where we ought to be. And so it's down there. And so he's done well. If we come over to LMS, you'll notice that they also started the month with 0 COVID among the staff, but they're up to 4. So there is definitely some numbers showing up at this point, hence the reason I'm choosing the mask. And we've got several people at the SAU that are out right now. It's our numbers aren't on here, but it's definitely going around. But you can see that LMS is also in the medium and low categories. And at Campbell, they also have historically been the school with the lower numbers. So you'll notice their staff numbers, for whatever reason, didn't spike. And so Jake's celebrating in the back there, but he also has low attendance, and even the 5.1 that kicked up to medium, the 5% threshold, it was just over, just a nudge. So if you go to the summary sheet, I just want to remind the board of how ugly December was with RSV, flu, not so much COVID, but there was just, you name it, it was going around. And then we took our break, our Christmas get away from each other opportunity, and we've come back to medium and low numbers. And, we're trending this week to also have a medium-low experience. So
I honestly think it's these 4-day weeks. Kids get to sleep that extra day and just relax more. Because my son was sick over the weekend, but it lasted a day. There's still stuff going around, but just that extra sleep and relaxing helps too. Excellent.
So the other piece is that I wanted to point out that the archived COVID data, and actually I'm going to come at this a little bit differently because it's now available on the website. So if I go to the Litchfield School District website and you look down below underneath district news, you can see the daily health screening news. So if I click here that I want to read more about it, you'll also notice there is a link here that says COVID reports. And what happened was when we took the tab off the top, because we wanted to kind of not have it like top dead center of our website, right? So we took the yellow flag that said coronavirus away. We also lost access to all the information that had been archived there. So what we've done, and this is an approach going forward, if you click on that report link, it now opens a folder in the Google Drive, and every single COVID report that we've done from the beginning of COVID is here. And they're all organized by date. Folks can sort it by modification date or whatever. And so this is our strategy going forward, to provide links to a Google Drive folder that then people can navigate to find the information that they need to. So,
all right, say where it is again.
It's all there.
Under district news, I'm not seeing it there, so I'm
I
in
never
the
went
wrong
read
area.
Well,
read more.
I never want to look at those numbers again.
And the problem with district news, Tara, you'll notice that there's 4 that show up. I think there's 8.
Yeah.
They rotate. So if you don't
So
see,
it is in that.
Yep, just click the arrow on the side if it's moving on you. And you will get,
okay,
get the
got
one
it.
that says
Read more.
daily health
Got it.
screening, and then
Got
click
it.
read more. That's where the numbers are.
Okay.
The Comcast Internet Essentials.
What is it?
Yeah, I like
That's
the
not
folder.
district news. The Comcast Internet Essentials.
Well, it's district news because they provide access free for families that are on the National School Lunch Program, so it's a way for
Like
us
$10 a month or something like that, yeah. It doesn't really say that, though.
It does when you click it.
Okay.
Yeah, you do have to click into it. And this may all change when we get the new website, but
Yeah.
for right now, that's where
Calling you, Andrew.
they
All
are.
the keys.
We cleaned that up also. There were some things there, but overall, I think the key thing is the strategy of linking to Google folders. So when you
Just
click
looks
school
cleaner.
board agenda, instead of having a list of all these links that we have to update, it's going to just bring you to the organized folder, and that's find the agenda you're looking for. Here they
It's
all
hard
are.
to find the agenda, though.
If I may make a very small suggestion, can you label them with a date
Yes,
first?
I talked about
I
that
said
before.
that.
Well, that's exactly. Thank you. That's exactly what we've asked Jan to do. So now the date.
Because it just says
Said that.
school
I said
board.
it's just a
school
I
board
opened
agenda.
up August
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
17th.
Yes,
Is the
that's
first one.
exactly
Yeah.
exactly the
Thank you.
strategy we're following. I think, starting with everything that I'm saying is beginning January 1st. Like we have to draw a line somewhere. I'm not going to go back and rename umpteen files, but starting January 1st, this is the nomenclature we're moving to. So
That Internet Essentials partner link that's on here doesn't work. So I don't
You
know.
should tell someone on the website committee about
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
which this link is dead.
Yeah. Even if you copy it and paste it into a new browser, it doesn't direct you. So
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
not
if it's
doing
an
anything, is it?
active site edit. I have no idea. But I
All
know
right.
somebody I can ask.
All right, and then we had one more thing under, we had two
We
more
do.
things.
We have the audit.
Yeah, RFP update.
So I have not seen anything come in from any auditor. Has anybody else?
No.
No? All right, so, our option at this point, if we want to still keep this out there, is to perhaps adjust the target timeline and extend the deadline. I can only assume that the people, I don't know, I think maybe we're hitting tax time and maybe they just don't want to respond, although I feel like we should have.
Like, for those who are tuned in, right?
Yep.
Just take a moment and refresh everybody with what this is and where we are today.
So we issued an audit for us. We want to have. Hold on, let me pull it up. It is to look at. The goal is, we have 3 goals. Evaluation of the project cost accounting practices associated with Litchfield Middle School, the front entrance canopy, phase 1, which is the new roofs and windows, and phase 2, the HVAC, new lighting, solar panels, those projects, as well as Griffin Memorial School work and planning, which were all managed under Fund 30. Identification of the root causes and any significant contributing factors for the deficit in FY22 and continued deficit in FY23. Review and recommendations of any updated accounting and reporting procedures. This RFP is also on the website as well, in that district news section, which I saw it there. So this was issued back in December 15th. And we put it on the website. I put it on the district Facebook page. I put it on the Litchfield WhatsApp page, and actually received many comments on that page. So asked for people to share it out. And as of right now, they were to submit the RFP to the school board as a whole, our school board address, and we have not received any responses. The timetable for that would have been the target timetable would have been preliminary findings on March 8th, which was about 6 weeks from the start. with a written report in June. So knowing that we have no responses, and nobody even asked questions. So this is where I'm not sure if people knew about it or if they didn't know about it. You know, I think that there's kind of two different issues. Any thoughts? The easy thing to do would be to give it more time,
And where is
and
this
try to
posted?
promote it again.
Where is it posted, Tara?
It's posted on the district website, it's posted on the district Facebook page, it's posted on the Litchfield What's Up page.
School board did that.
Yeah. When we send out RFPs, do they get posted to, like if we have an opening, we post to Ed Jobs NH or in School Spring and things like that. Is there like an industry place we would put something like
I
that?
think the hard part, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the folks who would do this type of work are now getting into tax season. I don't know.
I think it definitely is busy season. When we were going over this, one of the questions I asked was,
Yep.
where do we normally submit our RFPs? So the answer was just the website. So it's not, I don't think it's any different process.
I see it under district news, but maybe that's just.
I just saw it.
I'm clicking the arrows here and scrolling through. I don't know.
So, I saw it by hitting view all news.
Oh, yeah, okay. Supplement.
And then it's the second supplemental audit RFP.
I mean, I'm fine with extending out the timeline for it. My concern is, are we?
There's no risk in extending out the time.
Right.
Exactly.
The reality is, and I don't think you're going to get any responses to it.
Yeah, if we don't get any hits, then we have to figure out what we're gonna do.
Yeah, exactly.
Should we
So-
take it? Does everyone agree? Should we make a motion to extend it? Would you,
Add 60 days to the timeline on across the board.
you think we need a motion or should we just
No.
do it?
You just
60
extend it.
days is
Okay.
fair, is that timeline fair with
All
everybody?
right. Does that go to that? Okay. All
All right,
right.
tell me, Tara. I'm just thinking that might.
Say that again?
60 days, does that sound about right?
Sure. Does that get us past tax time? It does.
Ish.
So, yeah. Yep.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Part C, new policy or policy discussion on the return that Andrew wrote?
Yeah, so I'll tee it up here, right? So at our last board meeting, we had talked about the need to draft a policy, which was based upon the November 3rd vote, to have an annual review by the sitting board at that time to return underspend of special education accounts back to the taxpayer. So with that, and not knowing future boards and who's sitting where and whatever, I felt maybe it was helpful, maybe not, board to decide, to provide some context as to.
So the budget committee won't cut, that was the,
Well, that's
that's the
that was
understanding.
That
That
was
was
the
kind of the
quote unquote
handshake.
handshake
Yeah.
agreement, right? Fine. So I put some background in there, helpful, not helpful for the board to decide, and then ultimately a draft policy statement that says on an annual basis, the board will make that decision review. Heidi, I did see your comment, I thought the board's vote was specifically for fiscal year 24. Absolutely, right, but should that be the policy? Or should the policy be more generic in nature for the annual review?
No, I just thought that should be in the background where it said at the November 3rd school board meeting at 2 hours and 8 minutes, the school board formally voted to enact a policy for the 23-24 year that would allow, but
but do we need
For
to
that year.
put the background as part of the policy? 'Cause
No,
I like how it's written, the policy.
you don't have to put the background.
Okay.
I felt that for somebody who's reading this as an independent document, a board 10 years from now, maybe it's helpful,
Excellent,
maybe it's
yeah.
not. I don't know.
so my only comment about, and I wrote this to Andrew, and so I'll just say it out here. My only comment about the background is just I feel like there may be different perspectives on what that handshake agreement was, when it came into play, how many years it was abided by, so I hesitate to put some background in because I worry that it might be viewed differently by different people. But that said, I definitely appreciate and understand why it's there, and do believe it gives context to something that future boards will have to wrestle with and may not understand why they're voting on this.
So my question, I guess my issue with this, and my issue with adopting it as a policy, is that it's essentially an agreement between two parties, right? So the board can annually vote on the intention to return any potential underspend, which we did this year for 2024. But I believe we did so with the understanding that the budget committee wouldn't make reductions in that area. And my understanding is that they did.
They did make a bottom line reduction to special education of $51,800.
Right. So
I don't know if that would change if there was a policy that was written and passed, because they have to vote
well,
again.
we
They
did
have
vote to return the underspend from fiscal year 2024.
Yep.
And they were aware of that vote, and we did say we would return it, and then a bottom line reduction was still made. So
The reality is the budget committee can do whatever they want.
absolutely, and they can always do whatever they want. But if we have a policy, I don't know. I feel like it's an agreement between two parties. It's an agreement between the school board at the time and the budget committee at the time. And
It doesn't need to be a policy? Or?
well,
Well, we tried the MOA or
Yeah.
MOU
Yeah.
route, and that was not well received, which I feel like that's what it should have been.
I just feel like it's an
my
intention
feel,
of goodwill.
I guess I see the intention of it, and I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate that we return money to the taxpayers at the end of every year that to offset the next tax rate setting. But I don't know how, if we make a policy and we agree to return that money, and then it's still, because we budget based on current enrollment plus what those needs will be the following year. If we agree that we're not going to spend it, but they reduce that line anyway,
I see what you're
you
saying.
see what I'm saying? Like, I thought the spirit of the agreement was in that
You don't
we're
touch
able
it,
to
yep.
budget and we're not going to touch it and we'll return it to the taxpayer.
So is there a way we could write the policy to say that the board would vote annually of its intention to return any potential underspend, so long as the budget committee does
Right.
not reduce, but if the budget committee reduces, then
Well,
it's null and
but
void.
I don't think we can have that agreement with them in our policy, right?
No, but we
This
can
year.
say this is what we're going to do if,
Should you take that action? this
should
is
you
what we're-
decide, to cut, then we no longer have the obligation to return the which I still don't think we should. I still think we should return the underspend. But,
Yeah.
But I mean, again, if it's one of those,
I mean, I don't want to be in a position where we have to micromanage those accounts, right?
Right.
It's an incredibly uncomfortable position to be in when the special education director is saying, I have student needs for $1.2 million, thereabouts, right? And we're nickeling and diming and saying, all right, well, we're going to take 50,000, 100,000, whatever, out of these accounts, when you could potentially need that and then some, right? That's why, for many years, we always said, if we can have this agreement where that bucket of accounts, I believe it's the 2301 specifically accounts,
1201.
1201, thank you, 1201 accounts, that any underspend would be.
And I
Sure.
I think that's a reasonable policy to have. But we can't, it still requires an agreement with the budget committee, and that isn't represented here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So can we edit it? Can we, I mean, this is, like any
Yeah.
policy, this is draft, first review.
yeah, this is a first reading. As far as I mean, I think. So could the policy be then the Litchfield School Board will vote annually to authorize the board chair to engage in conversations with the budget committee chair regarding the special education budget and the return of underspend and what that would look like as a commitment from both. I don't know how to word it.
I feel like we do that now. No?
We do.
I know,
and
but this is putting the policy in place to say that you're going to have that conversation. I mean, I see your point, which
Yeah.
is
Too.
we can agree to this, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be cut on the other.
It happened this year.
Right. Which is
I
frustrating.
think it's another sentence, right? So if voted to approve, underspend will be returned to the taxpayers to offset the tax rate. Should a reduction happen by the budget committee, right?
This
This policy will be re-reviewed by the school board.
Sure.
Something, I mean,
Tara?
that. I mean, I like what Heidi said about the chair approaching the budget committee, and maybe there's some type of language that we can put in here as a proposed template for what that agreement verbiage would be. You know what I'm saying?
I just think it's the school board's budget committee's representative to have that conversation with the budget committee and say, hey, it's a sign of goodwill, right? A show of goodwill. We voted to return the underspend for the following fiscal year of special education. It's up to you to do what you want, but we as a board have made that agreement, yes or no. Maybe we didn't, maybe we did. But if the budget committee then is subject to make cuts, then we as a board have the right to go back and reevaluate what our position is.
Which we have anyway, without the policy.
Yeah, that's it.
We do.
Yeah, that's in there.
Well, that gave us a lot to think
So,
about.
well,
I think it
right, so
needs
first
tweaking.
review,
The
you
fir-
read
yeah,
it?
I think the second line that you put in there, add that, but also in the beginning, you know, a representative
Right, now
from
I
the
can't
school
remember what it said.
board should approach the budget.
if it is reduced, then
Yeah.
I
it
think
can be
Use the word null and
reviewed.
void.
I use null and void. He said can be re-reviewed or something. Re-looked at.
I'd like to get budget committee weigh in on it, frankly.
Sure, so we can send this over to the budget committee for their thoughts too.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
Tara, you
I
can
can
send
bring
that
it to
or-
him. Yeah.
Yeah, because I do believe Chairman Sun sent an email after we had that vote asking us if we would consider putting in an annual policy.
Yeah.
So it's clearly something he's thought about. Hopefully, maybe that can come up at the next budget committee meeting.
They can have a similar policy.
I would be
for-
curious, was there any explanation for the $51,000 cut? Despite,
I think it was, you know, over budgeted every year. I think that's
don't
my
recall.
recollection.
okay, I didn't know if,
I think there was some confusion whether what got passed was actually a policy or not a policy. So, with that confusion, then I don't think they thought that that agreement was there. So
okay.
I think if something does get written like this with a policy and was brought to them, that probably would go a long way.
And it
What
helps
was
for
the vote
future
on?
boards. I mean,
Did you record a vote?
Yeah, the vote was 6-0, and it happened on December 8th.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a larger number.
I think they started with larger numbers
Got
that got
reduced,
voted
yeah.
down,
Yeah.
and then it ended up being 51,800.
Well, Tara's our budget committee
Yeah.
rep. I would say maybe she takes this to the budget committee, brings back that feedback, and then we can also mull over that additional language that we talked about. I am in favor of putting a policy in place on it. I do think it would be helpful. The only other comment I have is, do we want to put a timeline on here? When will the board vote? I know it's annually, but is it September before budget season kicks off? Is it June? Is it, you know, when are we making that commitment? I know it says we should do it annually, but, I don't know if we want to be more specific.
I would suggest August or September, so it's known
Okay.
beforehand.
Exactly. So.
And see, I would suggest that you actually do it at the budget presentation side, because you're gonna weigh that in the big picture. You think about November, you're getting flooded with numbers, flooded with information, and at that point, it would be, is this going forward something that you want to do? So you could do it earlier, but then you're kind of binding yourself, and you might think twice in November when you're getting hit with a bunch of big things, and, anyway.
I guess I can't imagine it's hard to, I don't want to say never. Okay, I won't even say it, but I can't imagine not returning the underspend. I understand it's happened before, and that's the reason that we're having this conversation, but it wasn't when I was on the board, and I can't remember.
It was a bill that came in after something. We didn't have the appropriations for it in the general fund, so money came out of this special services fund. Right? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to the way Corey always sort of explained that, yeah, that's the intent, but we have to land in a positive way. We know that from the budget, and frankly, if we have to use some of the underspend to cover that, that's just got to happen by statute. So that's where I think he wanted to leave that wiggle room.
And again, I don't have an issue with necessarily the operating budget underspend, but special education, I think, is, I would carve that out.
If we're allowed to budget for projected needs and maintain that amount.
All right, well, we had our first reading. I don't know that we are agreeing on any language for it. I think I would want to hear from the budget committee before we vote on.
So as the next step, right, send it over to Chairman Sun and the budget committee for their thoughts and review.
Yep.
But that could take a month at this point before they review it, given their meeting schedules.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, and we've already committed for the 23-24
Right.
year
Right, I don't think there's any particular rush.
Right.
Just
I personally would like to see these things in writing. There's been so much gray area around handshakes, and this happened, and that happened, and
many
remember
issues.
this.
Traditionally,
Yeah.
we do this.
And it's always been that way, so anything we can put in writing to say future boards is,
while still providing future boards with the autonomy to
right, to do.
do what they
They
decide
need to
they
do.
need to do.
Exactly. Any other comments? Andrew's working hard over
Thank you
there.
for drafting that, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
And just a general comment about policy. So we had talked about having a policy committee. I know we haven't scheduled that, but there are other policies. So on the February 1st agenda, I know there's a wellness policy I've been asked to bring forward, but it really should go to a committee unless we want to just do policy this way, which is the board dealing with it as a full board.
I feel like
But-
this is not working.
No.
I don't, but I also think we need to be mindful of the fact that some of the policy that comes forward, we need to be able to compare to NHSBA.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think
Model
NHSBA
language.
has a handshake policy. So this one,
Right, that will clarify some
this
things.
one we couldn't have compared, but like wellness policy, there's going to be a template.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The others that I'm aware of and I put on the next agenda for discussion purposes is home education. We need to revisit where we are with that. And then rental policy for our facilities. So it's probably time to revisit that because we had sort of stopped everything and now we're back to utilizing the facilities, which makes sense. But I want to just talk about it and make sure our policies
We
align.
talked about having the committee. I feel like that they should start going through the committee and work through that process.
don't have
Because the
enough
other thing is
people
we
on
have
half of our
4-hour
committees.
school board
Yeah.
meetings.
Agreed.
Let's try to condense those and make them shorter.
Look, I motioned for that months
Yeah.
ago. Y'all said no.
We're almost on track, don't go off
So,
track.
then I think we need to discuss who is invited to join the committee and who
I've
serves
said
on
I will
it. know
chair it.
Heidi's
I'm
on it.
happy to chair it.
I'm going to propose something and then,
Yeah.
if we're meeting on the first and third Wednesday, right? If we could meet earlier, if we had like a 4:00 budget committee, it can't be the majority of the board because then it's a board
Policy
meeting.
Right.
Budget
Policy,
committee,
I'm sorry,
policy. Yeah, okay.
sorry, policy committee, apologize. And it gives us an hour really to go through and to get everything cleaned up and then we can give a report right that night. And so, you could have something that's gone through a smaller subgroup and Heidi's agreed to chair that. And then we can be tasked with pulling in advance, here's the
Not it.
template,
Yeah.
for example,
was
the
feeling
model
weak
policy, so.
Who would be on that?
That's what I
Well,
was
so
asking.
then, I think
About
what we need is
rotating people based on
a
which
second,
policies.
board member who commits to having a policy
Which
view,
one of you are gonna
who would be
do it?
available at 4:00, right? And then the other thing is, we would invite in administrators.
She's not here.
If it, if it's a policy that's dealing with curriculum and instruction, we invite Mary to come.
Right.
If it's dealing with high school graduation, we invite Jake to come.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's
you-
good, yeah.
You target the people who need to be there. You don't have the standing committee and people saying, I don't know why I'm talking about something that doesn't apply to me,
Can
right?
we do it
So,
at 3:30 to 4:30 instead of 4 to 5?
yeah, we could,
Do it 3:30 to 4:30, so once school adjourns, right? Then I could do it remotely. Gives me a window to get things settled at home before coming here.
It's fine with me.
yeah, because we could have you
Great.
right up on the screen and with the Google.
I would be remote for all of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, the Google.
The Googles.
The Goog. I think that's fantastic. Do we need community members or,
The school board are the community members.
Okay,
So I
that's
don't know
fine.
that you need to expand it beyond that. But, you know, if you were dealing with, I'm trying to think. Okay, we talked about it tonight. A
Like what?
transgender policy,
Mm-hmm.
you might want to open that up to community input. Or,
Mm-hmm.
once the committee wrestles with a draft and brings it forward, there's the empty seats. People
Right.
can always come and provide that input. So I don't know that you need it in the policy making
Okay.
stage, but in the policy approval stage, you
Sure.
definitely need to
I
have that.
do think there should be one SAU staff person that is regularly.
It would be me.
Is it going to be you? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
didn't
mean-
want to volunteer you to do it. I mean, I didn't know who else.
Volunteer me.
Okay.
Alan told me. It's good.
awesome.
So you're proposing that that's
If that works for everybody, and it sounds
along
like
with
we have,
every school board meeting or once a month?
well,
every
let's play it
other
by ear. Let's see where we are
Does
with
it-
it, but
Yeah,
Is
it
it
just
on the
seems
school
like it's
board days?
adding a lot of
Yeah.
time for one for two people
I would
onto the
say once a
meetings.
month.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
on the
once a
same
month
day
is
as school
fine.
board?
yeah.
Once a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
Let's
And I
start
would,
there and
I
see
would have
where we get.
proposed
I need a
the
nap.
opposite Wednesdays, but we have facilities locked into
Right.
that time, so
Yeah.
that's,
Okay.
I think it's,
And I'd rather stack, to be honest. I'd rather have a busy than
One day, then
than
have another day.
Yeah. And if Andrew's gonna be remote, I don't see any reason why we can't be remote and it just be a remote meeting, or I'll come to your office, but then that way we don't have to,
actually,
reserve
I
this
like
room.
that, because if there's a break, like, I wouldn't want to be here and then have an hour to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
true.
rather be in my office, so
Right.
maybe we just agree it's a remote,
Perfect.
Yep.
okay. So I will send,
Cameras off and
And the earlier time will be helpful to
Right.
some of the
Yeah.
administrators in SAU.
all right, 3:30 to 4:30, I'm gonna send an invite, and
when does this start? What-
Tomorrow.
February 1st, if you can
February
do,
1st.
or we could wait to the 15th if you'd rather. You know what, we've got policies to get after, let's get after them, and we've got this draft one, so let's keep plugging away on it. Here comes an invite, I'll get it sent out.
February 1st, 3:30 to 4:30. That's fine.
Got it.
All right, we all set?
Yep.
School board comments. Does anyone have any comments?
So we talked about LMS circuit breaker, we talked about LMS heat. Where did we land with the Wi-Fi at LMS?
Yeah, that came up on Facebook this week.
What's the
The
issue?
Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi.
The
Sounds like we have a
30,000.
plan in place, based upon our last meeting, we have a plan in place for Griffin, we have a plan in place for
Got
Campbell.
it.
We can have accessible Wi-Fi with a splash page for connectivity at those schools by the time school starts
Yep.
in the fall. Any updates on LMS? And what
So, Chris and I had a dialogue after, remember all the light bulbs that went on around the table
Yes.
about the tech fund?
Yep.
And so I had a conversation with Chris, and he said, whoa, let me explain a few things. So I asked him to put together, it together as a one-pager. So for example, if a firewall goes down, you could be looking at a $50,000 bill to restore and get everything back up. If you have a cyber attack and you have to recover from a cyber attack, he's like, that's a rainy day fund. That's not a implement fund. And I'm like, okay, give us, what you need to do is educate us. What would it cost to recover from these types of things? So he's gonna be coming back with a fact sheet for us.
Oh, good.
And I'll have that at a future meeting. The point being, he didn't just tap the brakes. I mean, I'm glad I had a seatbelt on, because he was like, time out here. This is, he said there's only $77,000 in the rainy day fund. And I'm like, yeah, it's not a lot of money if we get ourselves into a catastrophic situation.
He's right.
Right?
That's a helpful angle and lens to have on it. If you have a disaster, a cyber attack to take down massive infrastructure, and you're doing massive backup and restoration, it's expensive.
Yeah. So then I said, then how do we get moving ahead at this? So at the same time, we'll come forward with some thoughts on how to get LMS. He actually would prefer to get the network there updated and aligned with what's in place at the other two schools. So he is pulling that together for us.
Great.
So does that mean all of this is on hold or just the LMS?
It doesn't stop progress at Campbell or at
It doesn't.
Griffin.
Okay.
And we just have to figure out how to do it. You know, it's one of those, in a typical year, this might go on the end of the year spend ahead list. This is not a typical year. So, you know, we just have to say that out loud
Right.
and try to figure out how we're gonna do this.
Yeah, okay.
At, another comment, at our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion on curriculum and that topic in general. Just curious where we landed with next steps with that conversation as a board.
So that curriculum,
Competency stuff?
yeah, so those questions that came from that meeting were the agenda that we discussed at grading and reporting
Okay.
this past week. And so it was by building, so the buildings met about it. I believe Mary's gonna be pulling together the feedback from that, but I think the concept or the understanding, at least I have, is that we are at a bit of a crossroads when it comes to curriculum and competencies and how we want to implement this going forward. And we may want to have a larger discussion about that at a board level.
It was, I want to clarify, this is two things. It's competencies and competency grading.
Grading.
Yeah, we need competencies.
Sure. And
It's
and
how
we're
we
required
grade
to
it
have
is
them.
up to our district, how we grade those competencies. And that's apparently what they talked about. That's the difference.
But I do, my point stands, I think we do need to have a larger board conversation with a presentation from Mary about what her initiatives are and plans are going forward for implementing and continuing to implement across the schools. And again, we talked about what other peer cohorts are doing, so we can have that data and then we can make some decisions at a board level about.
I thought we were going to have a community forum about that, so parents.
We had talked about that at one point, but then the topic was so broad, we kind of ended up, it was a combination of a power school and competency, and it
It
No, we
does need
ended
to be
up
on a board
canceling.
agenda.
yeah.
I mean, time's ticking. It's very important that, at least for me, you guys have been at
You're-
it, longer than I
yeah.
have, but I'd like an overview of it, right? So I understand, or at least have a baseline
Right,
to have a conversation with you guys about it.
Yeah.
absolutely. Did we pick it, was it March?
So March 15th, so we actually had 4 community forums on the calendar. We didn't have September's, we didn't have
December.
November, I think it was, or December. But March 15th is the next date, so it's tentatively penciled in as a community forum on the notion of competencies and grading. So Mary is working toward that date and to have an opportunity for parents to come forward. You know, I think it's, the concept of forum is to have a dialogue, so what's the direct input
Right.
from parents? What are the things that people are concerned about? And we'll keep plugging from there.
So I would say maybe if we could have, when is the next meeting Mary comes to the board for?
So if Jake is on the 15th, Mary would be the
March
first March.
1st?
Yep.
So I think that would be a good timing for her to do that presentation for the board, because then we would be prepared on the topic before we go into the
Oh, and-
community
and viewers,
forum
too.
on,
Right.
on March 8th or whatever date that is.
So actually, just to clarify, so it's not March 1st because that's vacation week.
Oh,
So it's actually March
We're
8th.
away.
8th.
Okay.
Okay.
But I have a planner here in front of me and I'm going to put Mary down for the 8th.
When is vote? When is town?
7th.
Voting is on March 14th.
14th.
Yeah,
Hi,
there's a
Dave.
14th. That's
Okay,
right.
that's right.
That'll be the last meeting of this board.
The
And then we will reconvene with the new board on the 22nd. So the forum would be the day after the elections.
Sorry, wouldn't we reconvene on the 15th if we're the first and the third?
Well, the way it's on the calendar is
Because
Because
of
it's school
vacation week.
vacation.
we bumped them back because of school vacation week.
Both of them? I thought we just bumped the first one.
March
Otherwise, you're
1st is
meeting
school
back to
vacation
back.
week, right, so-
Okay.
Yeah.
So 8th and the 22nd.
And March is a weirdly long month because the first is a Wednesday. so
March is always a
March
long
never
month.
All right,
ends.
there's 5. There's 5.
I mean, the
weeks.
The 8th
Okay.
and the 22nd is
I
pretty
want to
good
make sure I
spacing.
have those on my calendar then. 'Cause
But I'm gonna put
that's-
down the 8th, competency grading.
I think that would be helpful. Then that would make the forum that you were talking about on the 15th
Correct.
for the, okay.
So we'll get board level, we can promote it with the, community, and then we'll have it on the 15th.
I like the forum we had at LMS in the cafeteria. Were you, any of you there? It was just a big square.
Yeah.
Instead of the
Yes, that was
auditorium.
nice,
I
yeah.
really,
Yeah,
I
for
really
the
liked
eighth
that
grade.
setup. It was very forum-y.
It was
It's a much smaller
big
group though.
square.
This is kind of a district-wide forum, community
Yeah, that was
forum.
just 8th grade
That was just
parents.
8th grade.
Or
But I
the-
agree, I
or
like
the
the
way
setup.
that it was done for the LMS, of reimagining LMS. I mean GMS. You know, just in tape. You know,
Tables in the
Tables.
gym.
The auditorium seems too formal, and it's, if someone's, as my students would say,
Right.
presentating on the bottom, it's hard to see.
right, right.
Presenting,
We want people talking with each other.
yeah.
Well, the problem with the auditorium is, it's like going to church, everybody sits in the back. And so somehow, I think we've got to like close a section of it off. I mean, you take the, public hearing the other night, and, you know, we could have been a little bit closer to Kate and felt more community-like, but
Well, and it's just so hard to see the screens in the auditorium because the main screen's in the back, and then when you put the 2 TVs, it's small. It's very small writing.
It's comfortable though.
It is,
Fun.
yeah.
That doesn't outweigh the cons for this type of thing.
Does anyone else have any school board comments?
Nope.
I went to the senior girls basketball game. It was awesome. Litchfield Youth, the girls basketball team was there too. It was really fun. It was funny to watch the high school girls play, and then the little kids. They played for 10 minutes and the score was 0-2. Like it was
Did
only
they do
one
like
basket.
halftime?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
It was.
that's
There were so many parents there. It was great. Manifest. Does it have 3 signatures?
Not yet, no.
Community
You can
input.
start passing that around.
Yeah, community input.
And it's 8:00.
Yes,
Wow.
Well done.
excellent. I'm going to close community input. And at this time, we are going to go into non-public session. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. The hiring of any person as a public employee, matters which, if discussed in public, would adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Yes.
All those in favor? Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.